Hello, this is the Stories Beside channel. I release videos every day for you. Subscribe and click the bell.
Robert shuddered and entered the dark room. "Come this way, please." The orderly led him down some long corridors. Finally, they found themselves in a light-filled hall. There was a table in the middle, a lifeless body lying on it under a sheet. The young man took a deep breath, trying to cope with the lump of tears in his throat. He couldn't get himself under control. "Are you ready?" The pathologist looked at Robert carefully. "Yes," the man whispered, finally regaining his composure. The orderly pulled back the white sheet, and Robert went pale and swayed, grabbing the edge of the couch. "Is that her?" "It's her, it's Melissa. There's no doubt about it." "Who are you to the deceased?" "Me, I'm her fiancé. We had everything ready for the wedding." "I'm sorry for your loss. She was so young, she should have lived and lived. Be strong. You've got the most difficult ordeal ahead of you, the funeral." "I can't believe it." In a trembling voice, the grief-stricken man said, "She's gone. Just a few hours ago, I was hugging her, kissing her, and she was laughing. She has an amazing laugh, and now—" He touched his bride's lifeless hand. "Her hand is cold. She will never smile at me again. How can this be?" He clutched his hands to his head, groaned, "To accept such a death, I don't believe it. I don't believe it. Though I look at her and see that it is her. Death and Melissa are incompatible. It doesn't make sense. I couldn't imagine in my wildest dreams that this could happen. She loved life so much. God, why? Why did you take her away from me? How happy she and I would have been together. Why is the world so unfair? My darling, how can I be without you? If I had been with you that night, I would have saved you. I would have died, but you would still be alive. But I wasn't there. My darling, my darling?" "Yes," the pathologist sighed. "Too bad about her and the baby. She could have had more children. She's beautiful." "What baby?" The man looked at her, uncomprehending. "You didn't know?" The doctor shrugged. "Your fiancée was pregnant, 8 weeks already. I'm sorry, this must be hard for you to hear." "Pregnant? What do you mean?" The bereaved groom looked from the orderly to the pathologist, bewildered by the unexpected news. He felt as if he had been knocked out from under his feet. "It can't be. You must have made a mistake. Melissa could not have been pregnant. I would have known. Maybe some other doctor could misdiagnose, but not me." The doctor shook his head. Robert turned pale. "Are you feeling all right?" An orderly asked anxiously, "Why don't I take you outside? Sit here on the bench, get some fresh air, you'll feel better." "I'm sorry for you. So many things all at once on one person's head." "Don't worry, you're young. It'll all work out. Time heals wounds like this. You'll meet a woman. She'll bring you back to life." Yes. I'd better go. I need to be alone." "It's me. It's my fault." Robert followed the orderly, not listening to him, muttering to himself. "If I'd stopped her, if I'd talked her out of going to that damn club, she'd still be alive and I didn't insist. Who could have stopped her, though? I agreed with her on everything. I couldn't say no to anything. Melissa, my Melissa, I'll never forgive myself for this. It's not your fault. No one could have known such a disaster would happen. You couldn't have known there'd be a fire, and you'd better not be alone now. Is there someone to take care of you?" The orderly asked kindly, opening the door for him, but the young man did not hear him. He was grieving. "My beloved Melissa is gone. How can I live? How can I live?" Robert wandered down the alley, seeing nothing in front of him, walking and muttering to himself under his nose like a madman. My Melissa, my girl, how will I live without you? Why? Why did you leave? I didn't keep you safe. I didn't stop you. If you'd listened to me, you'd still be alive. Honey, Melissa was fidgeting in front of the mirror, picking out an outfit. Look, what dress do you think I should wear? Her cell phone beeped subtly. Hello? Don't distract me. If you keep calling every 5 minutes, I'll never get out. The girl cheerfully spoke into the receiver. I can't decide on a dress. She complained. How impatient you are. I'll be there soon. Melissa threw the phone on the bed. Kitty, help me comprehend the zipper. How do I look? Fuck this club. Robert frowned, glancing at her unhappily. It was a night to be alone together for once. We haven't seen much of each other these days. You spend more time with your friends than you do with me. I don't like it. You're my fiancé. The phone screen flashed again. Melissa grabbed it, quickly read the message, smiled. You're not listening to me at all. Your friends are more precious to you than me. Don't be angry, Kitty. The girl jokingly kissed him on the tip of his nose. I want to dance tonight, but you can't get me to go to a club. What now? To sit at home like two pensioners and stare at each other. It's not for me. You and I have a lot of nights like this ahead of us, so you'll get tired of me. I'll never get tired of you. Can we go to a movie or just sit at home and talk? You? Why a movie? Melissa wrinkled her nose. We're not 18 years old. Tell me about sitting in the back row and kissing. What's wrong with that? But together, it's very romantic. And then we'd get in the car and drive around the city all night. No offense, but we've already arranged to meet the girls. Oh, here we go. The girl grabbed the phone again. There they are again. Yes, I'll be down in 10 minutes. Melissa laughed impatiently. Wait for it. Honey, look at me. How do I look? You're not going anywhere. Robert stood in the doorway. I don't want you to go with them. We're getting married soon, and you're always running away from me. I don't want to share you with anyone. I want to be with you every minute of every day. I don't know what's so appealing about a dark, smoky room with music blaring. And it's full of strange men, and I don't want them slapping you. Don't be mad. Melissa fixed her luxurious brown hair. It doesn't suit you, and besides, you're not my husband yet. She poked him in the stomach with her finger. Look, I might change my mind if you're going to keep restricting my freedom. Just kidding. She smiled sweetly at her lover. Don't be possessive. What can I do if I'm not a homebody? Do you want me to sit at home, knitting socks in the evenings? You must admit, it's very boring. And anyway, I'd like to go out a little before the wedding. Then I promise I'll only be around you. I'm all yours now, but I don't want to give up my friends either. Don't be a nuisance. She gently pressed her whole body against him. Don't keep me here, or my friends will come for me. You don't want them to make a fuss, do you? Please don't go. I missed you. I haven't seen you all day. I wanted to spend the evening with you. Why don't I cook dinner, or we can order in, and then we can sit together. Open a bottle of wine. The whole night is ours. I miss you too, my love. She gave him a quick kiss and deftly slipped past him to the exit. I feel like dancing for tonight. Her cell phone buzzed. Here's the message again. I'm already expected. Without stopping me. Throw the phone away. He tried to take it away from the girl. You're always talking to someone, texting. You don't care about me, and I'm your fiancé, your husband. I'm aware of that, kitten. Don't spoil my mood. Don't disappoint me. I promise it'll be the last time. Bye, honey. She sent him a kiss from the doorway. I won't be long. I'll be back before you know it. You and I have a lot of nights ahead of us. I love you. I'll be back soon. Finally met Melissa's friends right outside the club. We thought you'd never come. You're already struggling to get out of your fiance's arms now. But what happens when you're married? Will he make you stay home? It would be fun to imagine Melissa as a model mother and wife. That's hilarious. Melissa, I would love to see this picture. Can I be your firstborn's godmother? Melissa, can you cook? I'd pay a lot to see you at the kitchen table. I hope your husband dies of old age and not poisoning himself at one of the family dinners. A model wife in an apron and a frying pan in her hand. Laugh, though your jokes are inappropriate. Everything will be just the way I want it. The pretty girl replied haughtily. Robert loves me, so I have no inhibitions in our house. Why are we standing here? Let's dance. Melissa, you look amazing in that dress. Admiringly looking at her, Mason said, and me. Pouted her lips offensively, his friend Helen. And you, of course. Gently kissing her on the top of her head, reassured the young man. I'm a polite man, just had to compliment your friend. I suggest having a glass of cocktail. Melissa moved to the beat of the music. The mirror ball under the ceiling cast a glare on the dancers. The mood was perfect. For the mood, we don't mind, replied the young people and rushed to the bar. And the groom won't say anything to you? He's sitting alone at home, and you're having fun with us, and suddenly he'll get a great idea to come here. Helen took a sip, then another. Helen, Robert is the kind of man who prefers the comforts of home to the fun of the club, so I have nothing to fear. And then he realizes I'm not drinking juice here, so don't attack him. He's a good man and he loves me, and that's worth a lot. And he doesn't ask for anything in return. You'll run away from him in a week. My friend remarked, he's boring and all right. Do you really like the prospect of living with him for the rest of your life? Stop. Stop all this talk about my fiancé. Tonight we're gonna have a lot of fun. Great music. Her supple body picked up the rhythm with pleasure. Melissa gave herself over to the dance, oblivious to her surroundings. I'm tired, Helen said. Let's sit down for a while, shall we? The company sat down at the table on cozy leather sofas. You guys are so cool. Mason looked at one girl and the other with a smile. You don't drink anything at all. Should I suggest some other cocktail? 'Cause I'm supposed to be as smooth as a whistle. My baby, Robert, will be mad at me if I come home too tipsy. She looked playfully at her date, Michael. And I don't need that before the wedding. Shall we go dancing then? The man suggested. Both couples stepped onto the dance floor and moved to the music. You're so hot. Pulling her close to him, Michael said. You're a lot of fun, but I'm looking forward to more. You wouldn't deny me the pleasure of kissing you somewhere in a private corner of this room, would you? Careful. Melissa laughed, tilting her head back to get a better look at her companion. I'm married without 5 minutes. So what? The man's eyes reflected desire and admiration for the girl. Today your fiancé is not around, and you are mine for this evening. Isn't that right? I dreamed to take off this dress, to feel under my palms your silky skin. You want that too, don't you? Admit it, I can see you're trembling with impatience. Yes, I want to relax tonight. She tilted her head and laughed. She was dizzy from the cocktail she'd drunk. The music hanging in the air, the tobacco smoke, the hall lights, everything created a cheerful atmosphere. Listen, suddenly the girl stopped and looked around warily. Don't you think it smells like burning? I think so. Her companion laughed and tried to kiss his partner. It's time for a drink. Come on, our friends have been waiting for us. We should take a break. Can't you smell burning plastic? You're just imagining it. Look, everyone's dancing, and nobody notices. Don't panic. If something happened, they'd have raised the alarm long ago. Don't be a bore. Let's go to ours. I feel so good with you now. Melissa, now and then looking around, followed Michael. Anxiety did not let her go. We thought you weren't coming back. Helen pouted her lips resentfully. It's not fair to your friends. Don't disappear for too long. We're already here with you. Michael kissed her on the cheek. Melissa feels like something is burning somewhere. You shouldn't laugh. The girl furrowed her brow in concern. It really smells like something. Can't you smell it? Don't make it up. The man handed her a glass with a cocktail. Drink, relax. They impatiently drained the glasses. Now come with me. There's something we need to discuss. He glanced meaningfully at his buddies, picked up his companion, and headed out of the hall, looking for a place of privacy. I don't understand. Helen stared after the couple. What was Melissa thinking? She's about to get married, and she's out with someone else. And she's not afraid that Robert will tell about her adventures. She's desperate. I feel sorry for her fiancé. He'll have a lot of grief for her. None of your business. She's got her own head on her shoulders. That's what Mason said. I hope you're not going to tell Robert about Melissa. He sniffed uneasily. Hey, it does smell like burning. Shouldn't we be getting some fresh air? Suddenly the lights blinked. Once. The music stopped, and the hall became dark. Visitors began to light flashlights in their phones. Someone took a lighter in his hands. Ladies and gentlemen, a cheerful voice of a DJ sounded among the darkness. Please remain calm. A little trouble. But don't forget that darkness is the friend of youth. The room erupted in laughter. Have a blast. In just a few minutes, we will restore the club. At that moment, something sparked at the far end of the hall. Then small flames burst out of the darkness. They flickered once, twice, and then disappeared as if nothing had happened. There was silence in the hall. People froze, as if in a hypothetical dream, waiting for what would happen next. A few minutes later, as if by magic, the flames appeared again, and they immediately skidded on the ceiling, on the drapes, quickly spreading through the hall, covering more and more territory with fire. Thick, poisonous smoke, then more and more confidently began to spread in the air. Burn! There was a scream, and people rushed towards the exit. Please don't panic. The DJ exhorted into the microphone. Try to stay calm. Don't create a crowd. Don't block the aisles. Everything is under control. There's no cause for alarm. We're all going to go outside now. Don't crowd at the entrance. Club officials are doing everything they can to stop the fire. But the crowd didn't listen to him, sweeping away tables and chairs. People rushed for the exits. The word fire was like a trigger. Pushing, shouting people rushed into the street, dropping each other, trampling the feet of the unfortunate who, unable to hold on, fell at the feet of the panic-stricken crowd. Disregarding their cries for help, the club-goers were trying to get to the emergency exit. Please don't leave me. Let me out, let me out. The voices, gripped by fear and pain, rang out. Don't push, don't block the entrance. You scoundrel, you hit me. Help me. I can't breathe, do something. The people, mad with fear, tried to escape from the trap they were in. And the fire was spreading faster and faster by the minute. It licked the ceiling with its flaming tongue. Hot drops of red-hot plastic dripped down from it onto the heads of the panic-stricken clubgoers. Screams and moans came from all sides. Melissa, cried Helen. Where are you? Mason, they're nowhere. What can we do? We have to save ourselves. Don't slow down, or they'll crush us. I can't leave Melissa here. We have to find them. Are you crazy? How will you find them now? The fire's getting closer and closer to the exit. It's gonna burn with all its might. If we don't get out in time, we'll burn alive. Is that what you want? What do we do? Melissa is a close friend of mine. What if they can't get out? Look at this. It's pandemonium. You know, honey, in a situation like this, it's every man for himself. She's not alone, Michael's with her. Maybe they're already outside. Don't stop, I'm begging you. Smearing soot-stained tears on her cheeks, Helen said. They had already gotten out. There must be an emergency exit where they were going. You're right, we should get out ourselves. With Melissa, Michael, she's not alone. Together they won't get lost. Hold on to me. It's only a little while, and we'll be out of here. If we try to go back into the hall now, we'll be swept away, trampled. We have to follow the crowd. Michael will be able to save Melissa. You better take care of yourself. Obeying the flood of people, the young men made their way out. Mason coughed as he breathed in the fresh air. They're gone, Mason. Looking around in horror, Helen exclaimed. They stayed there. They're going to die. What are we going to do? Why do you worry about them? The young man waved his hand. The main thing is that we got out. The firemen and ambulance have already arrived. They will save them. Now just wait and do not interfere. Calm down. Nothing can be changed. Don't punish yourself. Helen sobbed on the man's chest. They are there. Choking on her tears, she shouted, They are still there. Melissa, we should have at least tried to help them. Why? Why did you stop me? There was the sound of breaking glass. Flames burst from the windows. Black clouds of acrid smoke rising to the sky. Everybody get away from the building. A sonorous voice came through the megaphone. Those who need medical help, come to the ambulances. Step away from the doors. Don't block the way. Let the firemen work in peace. In front of frightened people, rescuers unfolded hoses and began to extinguish the fire. The victims were taken out of the room and sent straight to hospitals in the city. That's not her. Helen rushed like mad to one ambulance and another, hoping to find her friend. She's nowhere to be found. Do you realize she stayed there? I asked you to come back. We could have saved them. We wouldn't have saved them. Mason justified himself. How could we find them in the dark? And you were dead. Who would have been relieved? I'll never forgive myself for my cowardice. I wish I had died with them. What makes you think they're dead? They'll be found and rescued. Look, they're bringing out the living. Can't you see the fire raging inside? No one could survive in there. Jesus, how are we going to tell Robert that Melissa died? I dread to think what will happen to him. It's none of our business. Let the police handle it. Let's go home. I'm tired. I want to wash up and go to bed. You can't help them now. How can you think about it? Poor Melissa, to die just before the wedding. Why do we have to go to the club tonight? Please don't split up. The voice on the megaphone has come through again. It is necessary to clarify the number of injured and dead. If you can't find those who were with you at the club, please approach the police officers and give information about the missing. We have to do that. Helen pulled Mason with her. Do you have any idea what Robert's going through right now? He's waiting for Melissa to come home, and she's gone. We have to report her, at least this last little thing we have to do for them. You do as you wish, but I'm going to the police. The young men headed for the Temporary Information Collection Center. Finally, Mason managed to convince Helen to go home. Robert could not sleep a wink until morning. Anxiety was growing in his soul. Why had Melissa turned off the phone? He wondered. She should have been back long ago. What could have happened? Where to look for her now? Should Helen call? What if Melissa decided to stay the night? She didn't want to wake me up. With shaky hands, I dialed the girl's phone number, but her cell phone was unavailable. Where are they all? Should I call the police or wait? The man couldn't find a place. Time passed, and his beloved never appeared. He did not notice how tired of waiting he fell asleep. It seemed to him that he only closed his eyes for a second, and then he was startled by a sudden phone call. Robert? He heard an unfamiliar voice in the receiver. Hello. I am compelled to inform you that your fiancée, Melissa, was killed in a nightclub fire. We're very sorry for your loss. How did she die? A man stood in the middle of the room and couldn't move. This can't be happening. She can't be dead. We're about to get married. What happened? You must have made a mistake. It's not her. I'm sorry, but it's true. It was a tip from some friends she was out with that night. The electrical wiring in the club caught fire. The fire spread quickly. People panicked. Your fiancée couldn't get out of the room. Her buddies confirmed she was definitely there. You'll have to come down for a lineup. I know it's a difficult procedure, but we need your testimony. I don't believe it. Stunned, staring at the blacked-out screen, Robert said, She can't be dead. It's not true. What about our wedding? No, it can't be. They were wrong. These people are definitely wrong. I'll go right now and prove it wasn't Melissa. She was just playing a joke. He fidgeted, getting ready. His head was buzzing, his thoughts jumbled. The man could hardly understand what was going on. Half an hour later, he was already standing in front of the medical examiner's office. After gathering his courage, he pulled the heavy door open. It's good that they came at once. The pathologist looked sympathetically at Robert. We'll get her back to you as soon as possible. Maybe it's not my fiancée. Robert looked pleadingly at the man. That's why we asked you here. You must be absolutely certain that this is your fiancée. Ready? I'll get it. Do you need any help? Robert shook his head negatively, pulled himself together, and looked at the body. Melissa's head was resting on the couch on top of a white sheet. Hair burned in places, no blood in her face. Ah! Robert groaned in pain, closed his eyes. His fingers clenched into a fist of their own accord. Is this Melissa, your fiancée? Do you recognize her? Yes, that's her. The young man barely spoke. He refused to believe that Melissa, his adored Melissa, was lying immovably before him. Her face was a grimace of horror and pain. My condolences. The pathologist was silent. I think you should know that your fiancée was drunk, so she couldn't get off the premises. And also, he stopped talking again. She was pregnant. Pregnant how? Robert was confused. She didn't say anything. Probably didn't have time. The lost young man headed for his car. He hardly realized what was happening. The most difficult ordeal lay ahead of him. All their friends and family had gathered for the funeral. Robert refused to believe that Melissa was gone. The farewell ceremony passed as if in a dream. Already at the wake, when almost everyone had left, Helen sat down with him. Robert, the girl sympathetically squeezed his hand. I'm sorry about what happened. I am to blame for Melissa's death. The young man did not hesitate to cry. If I had persuaded her not to go to the club, she would still be alive. It was hard to change her mind about anything. Helen grinned sadly. She was a good friend. And a bad bride. Mason remarked. He was a little drunk. You didn't know everything about her. Friend, something she kept from you. Don't you dare. The girl gave her buddy a warning look. She's gone. Don't bring up the past. Let her remain in Robert's memory, cheerful, loving. I will not hide the truth from him. Mason said stubbornly. Robert, you must know I have no right to be silent. It is very hard for me to see you suffer. She was unworthy of your love. She is not a woman to suffer for. What are you saying? She was the best woman, tiredly objected the serene young man. And now she's gone. I can't imagine life without her. She was everything to me. I'm dead, crushed, ruined. I don't want to live. She wasn't faithful to you. There at the club, Melissa was with another man. She cheated on you all the time. She cheated on you just before the wedding. That fateful night, she was seeing another man. You're lying. Robert's eyes are bloodshot. You have no right to besmirch my fiancé's good name. She loved me. Melissa never cheated on me. Why? Why do you say such a disgusting thing? My poor girl. She can't even contradict you. Robert, calm down. Helen tried to stop him. And you shut up. She went after Mason. Can't you find another time for this kind of news? Can't you see the state he's in? You're hurting him. Let him find out now, and from us, the police will tell him anyway. Robert, Melissa died because she and Michael were drunk and making love somewhere in the back of the club. That's why they couldn't get out. When the lights went out, there was panic. We had no chance of finding them. You know, in a situation like this, it's better to move with the crowd, especially since we were expecting to see them on the street. I don't believe a word of it. Robert looked at Mason with unseeing eyes. Melissa couldn't cheat on me. I don't know why you're trying to defame her, but for God's sake, shut up. I don't want to hear this filth. You're lying. You've always been jealous of our love for her. Of course, this is the right moment to talk trash about my Melissa, but you won't succeed. Understand. I'll never believe she went behind my back to see another man. She was pregnant. We were going to have a baby. She didn't have time to tell me. How hard it is for me to know that I will never be able to kiss my beloved Melissa again, never hold our baby in my arms. I'm alone without her. I don't know why I'm still alive. It's not your baby. Helen said sadly. I'm sorry you're just finding out now. You too. Robert exclaimed sadly. She was your friend. She trusted you. How can you accuse her of cheating on you? Why would you want to besmirch Melissa's good name? I'm sorry I didn't tell you sooner. I was hoping Melissa would tell you herself. So you knew. You knew she was cheating on me and encouraged them to see each other. You're 100 times worse than she is. That's your business. Helen objected. Did I have the right to judge Melissa? She promised to tell you everything and to stop seeing men. Why are you telling me all this now? Robert clenched his fists painfully, shakily stood up from the table. Get out of our house, he said softly, putting so much hatred into his voice that Helen and Mason recoiled in fear. I don't want to see you again ever. Forget my number. I have no more fiancé. I have no more friends. Remember, I didn't believe you. My Melissa was pure and honest and loved me. No matter what you say about her, you can't convince me otherwise. You shouldn't do that. Helen quickly got out from behind the desk and made Mason get up. I thought you needed to know the truth. And you asked me if I wanted to know it now. He slumped heavily in his chair, clutched his head, and froze, consumed with grief. Robert, we understand you're not yourself and we don't take offense. If you need help, know that we're always here for you. Mason put a hand on his shoulder and squeezed it, but Robert remained immovable. Son, his mother came over to him. What's wrong? Why did your friends leave? Leave me alone, Mom. Deeply, said the young man. I want to be alone. I understand, son. It's very scary to lose the one you love. She was so young, so beautiful. I sympathize with you very much. If I could do anything to ease your suffering, tell me. I'll do everything. Don't shut yourself in. Talk to me. Tell me what's on your mind. You'll feel much better." Clara stroked her son's head sympathetically. Robert jerked as if he had been hit. He dropped his head in his arms and sobbed, his heart broken. Melissa's smiling face stood before his eyes. She was so beautiful and unattainable. The man clutched the tablecloth with his hands and yanked it sharply towards him. There was a clinking sound of breaking dishes. Those gathered at the wake looked at him with horror, but no one dared to make a remark. Everyone understood how hard it was for him to bear the loss of his beloved bride. "Son, we have wonderful news for you," Clara announced at dinner. "We are going on a sea cruise. The tickets are in our pocket." "Congratulations," Robert responded indifferently. "Have a good vacation." "You don't understand, son," William added cheerfully. "We're all going together. It's been so long since we've been on a family vacation, and it's all worked out so well. What do you need me for?" "Come, I don't want to disturb you, and I'll work in peace and quiet." "What do you mean, why?" "It'll take your mind off things. Look what you've become like, a real recluse. The sea air will be good for your health. How many times can you give in to grief? Life doesn't stand still. I'm healthy, Mother, and I don't want to go anywhere. My life suits me just fine. What have I done to you? Physically, you may be healthy, but your mental state needs a jolt. You just need to change from office to quarters for a while. You'll see a whole new lease on life. Imagine 2 weeks of complete relaxation. Nothing to think about. I checked. There are excursions planned along the way, concerts, entertainment. Anyway, you can't take no for an answer. It's about time you started going out. I have no desire to go out. You go ahead and I'll stay home. You'll get a break from me, and I'll get a break from you. How can you accuse her of cheating on you? Why would you want to besmirch Melissa's good name? I'm sorry I didn't tell you sooner. I was hoping Melissa would tell you herself. So you knew. You knew she was cheating on me and encouraged them to see each other. You're 100 times worse than she is. That's your business." Helen objected. "Did I have the right to judge Melissa? She promised to tell you everything and to stop seeing men." "Why are you telling me all this now?" Robert clenched his fists painfully, shakily stood up from the table. "Get out of our house," he said softly, putting so much hatred into his voice that Helen and Mason recoiled in fear. "I don't want to see you again, ever. Forget my number. I have no more fiancé. I have no more friends. Remember, I didn't believe you. My Melissa was pure and honest and loved me. No matter what you say about her, you can't convince me otherwise. You shouldn't do that." Helen quickly got out from behind the desk and made Mason get up. "I thought you needed to know the truth, and you asked me if I wanted to know it now." He slumped heavily in his chair, clutched his head, and froze, consumed with grief. "Robert, we understand you're not yourself, and we don't take offense. If you need help, know that we're always here for you." Mason put a hand on his shoulder and squeezed it, but Robert remained immovable. "Son," his mother came over to him. "What's wrong? Why did your friends leave?" "Leave me alone, Mom." "Deeply," said the young man. "I want to be alone." "I understand, son. It's very scary to lose the one you love. She was so young, so beautiful. I sympathize with you very much. If I can do anything to ease your suffering, tell me. I'll do everything. Don't shut yourself in. Talk to me. Tell me what's on your mind. You'll feel much better." Clara stroked her son's head sympathetically. Robert jerked as if he had been hit. He dropped his head in his arms and sobbed, his heart broken. Melissa's smiling face stood before his eyes. She was so beautiful and unattainable. The man clutched the tablecloth with his hands and yanked it sharply towards him. There was a clinking sound of breaking dishes. Those gathered at the wake looked at him with horror, but no one dared to make a remark. Everyone understood how hard it was for him to bear the loss of his beloved bride. "Son, we have wonderful news for you," Clara announced at dinner. "We are going on a sea cruise. The tickets are in our pocket." "Congratulations!" Robert responded indifferently. "Have a good vacation." "You don't understand, son," William added cheerfully. "We're all going together. It's been so long since we've been on a family vacation, and it's all worked out so well. What do you need me for?" "Come, I don't want to disturb you, and I'll work in peace and quiet." "What do you mean, why?" "It'll take your mind off things. Look what you've become like. A real recluse. The sea air will be good for your health. How many times can you give in to grief?" "Life doesn't stand still. I'm healthy, Mother, and I don't want to go anywhere. My life suits me just fine. What have I done to you?" "Physically, you may be healthy, but your mental state needs a jolt. You just need to change from office to quarters for a while. You'll see a whole new lease on life. Imagine 2 weeks of complete relaxation. Nothing to think about. I checked. There are excursions planned along the way, concerts, entertainment. Anyway, you can't take no for an answer. It's about time you started going out. I have no desire to go out. You go ahead and I'll stay home. You'll get a break from me, and I'll get a break from you. Son, I realize the pain of loss is still fresh, but it's been a year since Melissa died. You can't keep to yourself. Hasn't the discovery of her death made you forget about her? Is she the kind of woman you should suffer so much for? I don't believe you've forgiven her yet." "Yes, Mother. If she were still alive, I'd forgive her for everything." "Jesus, Robert, you can't be so sad. Melissa's gone, but you're a living person. Life didn't end with her death. I'm sure you'll meet another good girl, and you'll love her. You deserve to be happy, and happiness walks after you. It's only worth a good look. What are you up to, Mom? Are you up to your old tricks again? Who is it this time?" "I'm not going to meet anyone. I'm sick and tired of your indomitable desire to marry me. Leave me alone for a while. Son, you're still young. You can't behave like a monk. Of course, I like that you're giving your all to your work. I'm glad that this zeal has had a positive effect on your career, but you can't do that. We want to see you happy again, and you're burying yourself alive. Yeah, and you've set your sights on marrying me. I thought you were kidding about the matchmaking. What kind of joke is that? You're a man, you're the next of kin. Look around you, you're surrounded by so many beautiful girls. Among the string of my potential brides, whom you invented to invite regularly to our house, I have not met a single one who could overshadow in my heart the image of Melissa. Incidentally, they all agreed that they wanted nothing to do with me. I'm glad they realize that now, and not at the wedding you would have surely played for us. Don't you ever think of giving me your consent to marry you. You are insufferable," Mother exclaimed in her heart. "No woman will not tolerate to be compared with another, especially with the one who is no longer alive. And my father and I just dream of marrying you. Oh, what beauties have been in our house. If I were younger," William smiled dreamily, "it's not about you, it's about our son." His mother sternly reprimanded him. "We didn't tell you that Jennifer is traveling with us, along with her parents. I think this girl is attracted to you. At least she didn't refuse to keep us company." "Why?" Father remarked enthusiastically. "It's not a bad option. She's a docile, quiet girl, and she'll make a good wife. With your character, you cannot choose. Too docile, or rather indifferent to everything." Robert sighed. "I don't think she cares whether I propose or not. I'm sure you're wrong. We parents are looking forward to you getting married. It'll be very romantic if you're on the boat, proposing to her, huh? Son, think about it. Jennifer's a very nice girl. You take a good look at her. Of course, she loses out to Melissa in looks. She was too flamboyant, too flashy, too gorgeous, too vampy, and Jennifer's different. But maybe that's the safe haven you need right now. Maybe your heartbreak will heal with her around. I'm not going to marry anyone. I don't understand why all this is happening. I'm fine on my own. I hardly know this Jennifer of yours. I don't know her, but she's a very quiet woman. Who knows what she's up to? You'll have a good chance to get to know her on the boat. Son, I can see you like her too. Don't make it up, Mom. I hardly recognize her in a crowd. And you can't get to know a person properly in 2 weeks. Let's not guess. Let's take a trip and see what happens. Don't deny it. You'll have to think about marriage and a bride sometime. Let it be Jennifer. Son, William put a hand on his shoulder. We're not forever, and we need to know that you won't be alone. We still have grandchildren to look forward to. And look at the girl. She's the right one, and she won't betray you, not like your Melissa. Father. Clara looked at him reproachfully. Don't hurt the wound. And you, Robert, think carefully before you refuse. All right, have it your way. The young man waved his hand. Well done. That's a good girl. You'll thank us at the end of the trip. A week later, Robert stood on the deck of a pleasure boat and watched the shore moving away. Robert, entering the cabin, demanded his mother. Let's go to dinner. Stop staring at your laptop. Jennifer's parents invited us. I really hope that if not today, then tomorrow you will surely propose to her. Mom? Robert begged, leave me alone. Here I am, sitting in my cabin, not touching anyone working. If you want this wedding so badly, make your own arrangements. I don't want any part of it. You've already made up your mind without my involvement. Keep doing what you're doing. One thing I can promise, if I can't avoid the wedding, I'll try to attend it in person. You're joking already. That's a good sign. It means recovery is just around the corner. My boy, we'll take care of the wedding preparations, you bet. But the marriage proposal will have to be yours. Quit your job. We're waiting for you at the restaurant. Okay, Mom. My son sighed. I'll be there, as long as it's over quickly. Good for you. True, everything is just beginning, but this is already details. I will not scare you. Promise me you won't take too long to propose. Clara walked away, leaving Robert in deep thought. He didn't want to go anywhere, but he realized that he couldn't avoid the dinners together. Without desire, Robert packed up and went to the meeting. The young people were assembled. The parents greeted him with cheers of joy. We never thought we'd see you today. Look how much fun. William nodded his head toward the deck, where the passengers were dancing. The organizers were holding some kind of contest. Jack and I have decided to join the dancing group. Our ladies refuse, and we're not going to sit still. Right, Jack? That's right. Jennifer's father agreed. But are we here to eat or sleep? We've got to have fun. Why don't we leave the young people alone? Suggested Doris, Jennifer's mom. And we'll have some old times' sake. The young people were left alone. Jennifer was staring off into the distance. Jennifer? Robert spoke. How do you feel about our parents wanting us to get married? I don't know, she shrugged. I'm going to have to get married someday anyway. Why not do it now? Your candidacy suits me fine. You saying that as if it doesn't matter to you who will be your husband. Why not? I'm not that cynical. You're really not the worst option. So you'd be willing to be my wife. Why not? She shrugged her thin shoulders again. Robert was surprised that Jennifer didn't try to make him feel comfortable. She didn't look at him at all, turning her brown eyes away from him. Outwardly, she seemed very calm, but her inner tension was revealed only by her fingers tightly locked together, the occasional twitching of her lips, and a pale face that had not a speck of blood on it. "Don't you want to know how I feel about you?" "Why should I? If even we are to be married, playing a couple in love is not at all necessary. Family life is stronger when it's built on mutual respect. Passion will fade over the years, but respect will remain. Isn't that right?" Meanwhile, the parents are back. "Oh, the kids." Trying to regain her breath, Clara said, "You should have come with us, the host of the evening, a real professional." "Exactly." Doris supported her. "I've never been in such contests. I'm tired of laughing." "And Jack and I," William remarked, "had a great time dancing. It's been a long time since I've had such a good time at a disco. I remember being a daredevil in my youth. Even now, you're a young man's man, too." The wife laughed. "If you don't mind." Robert got up from his chair. "I'll go to my room. I've had enough impressions for today. Good night." He was escorted away in silence. "Jennifer," Doris asked anxiously, "what happened between you two? Did he hurt you?" "And we had hoped that everything had worked out," Clara said disappointedly. "Nothing like you were expecting. We just talked for a while. And I think I'll leave you too." In the morning, everyone gathered for breakfast. The parents were discussing last night's party, and the young people were silent. "Parents," Robert spoke, "I realize that you are expecting Jennifer and me to make a very important decision for both families." He took a small box out of his pocket and opened it. "Jennifer, marry me." "Robert." The mother gasped. She looked at Doris with moist eyes. Had it really come to pass? "Son, how happy we are all for you." How I longed for my little girl to find happiness. Doris opened her arms towards Clara. Both women hugged each other warmly, and the men shook hands, but Jennifer said nothing to me. Robert inquisitively looked at the girl. "I agree." In a colorless voice, she answered, "Kids, my God, we're going to have such a wedding now." The parents laughed, congratulating each other. Fathers hugged Robert, mothers kissed their children and each other. "Oh, what a life we'll have now." Robert and Jennifer watched in silence as their parents rejoiced for them. "Doris," Clara looked worriedly at her future sister-in-law, "we're not going to put the wedding on hold, are we?" "Of course," she agreed. "There's nothing to think about. We should immediately start preparing for the wedding. The proverbial 3 months will not wait. I think a month is enough to send out invitations and book tables in the restaurant." The young people watched the scene blankly. It seemed to Robert that Jennifer was not interested in the wedding. She didn't take part in the conversation between the parents. She was thinking somewhere far away from the boat. "Jennifer?" Her mother addressed her. "What kind of dress would you like for the wedding?" "I just ordered a catalog, and there's such a good selection to choose from." "I don't know." The girl shrugged indifferently. "What's the difference? You can do without a dress. Buy an ordinary one. What's the use of this dress? It will be dusty somewhere in the attic." "You're wrong, daughter. A dress is a symbol of family prosperity. Show it to your daughter later." "Well, pick one for me. Whichever one you think suits me, I'll wear." "You know, Mom, I don't know about fashion. I rely on your taste." "That's what we'll do." Doris rejoiced, and with enthusiasm, began to discuss with Clara the style of the bride's dress. "To tell you the truth, I've already looked at something, even taken a photo. Can you tell me which one would suit my daughter better?" "Why did she agree to marry me?" perplexed Robert, watching the new bride. It's clear to the naked eye that she has no feelings for me. Usually girls are happy to propose marriage, and this one, it seems that and just lazy was just lazy to refuse me. What if? Suddenly a hunch struck him. Behind the ostensible indifference, she hides fear. But what could she be afraid of? It's strange, and Jennifer's acting strange. But I don't like the whole wedding thing either, and in that we're alike. He grinned sadly. At least we have something in common. I'm sorry. He got up from the table. I'm a little tired. I'll go to my quarters and do a little work for the night. But how could you, son? The mother was confused. I think you should do the wedding preparations too. It's your party after all. We should think about who to take as a witness. Mommy, he kissed her gently on the cheek. I'm sure you'll do just fine without me. And you'll do the wedding in the best possible way. I trust you completely. You can appoint your own witnesses. I won't have any objections. The parents looked at each other in silence, but did not object. In the morning, Clara walked resolutely into her son's cabin. Robert, you're being disgusting, she declared from the doorstep. Intelligent people do not behave like this. You are disrespecting not only our parents, but also your fiancé. What happened this time? Sighing heavily, the young man regretfully broke away from his work. I think I did everything you wanted me to do. Can I be alone for a while? I have some urgent work to do. Your work can wait, but your fiancé can't wait. How can you sit here when Jennifer's bored out on the deck? You didn't show up for breakfast. You're sitting there like an owl. You've got your head full of work. We said we were going on vacation. What do you need me for? You're all having a good time without me. What do you want from me? I don't interfere with anyone. I agree with everything. I'm decent. Are you putting a price on yourself? Have you forgotten how to woo a girl? You're a young man. Don't you want to flirt a little? Mom, in your scenario of my marriage, there was no wooing of the bride. I did more than that. I asked you to marry me. Are you kidding me? The woman was offended. We arranged your personal life, and you ungrateful, laughing at us. I didn't expect it. All my heart ached for you so shortly, and to heart attack to live, and he still laughs. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to offend you. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to offend you. Robert jokingly put his hands in the air. I give up. You can't resist such ironclad arguments. I'll be on deck in a few minutes. Believe me, I'm very grateful to you and Dad for taking care of me. In case you haven't noticed, I'm all grown up and I'm not jumping up and down on one leg. I still love you parents. Oh, son, what has this tragedy done to you? Even the humor turned black. The mother left, shaking her head. The young man quickly changed his clothes. What am I going to talk to Jennifer about? He thought, she shows no interest in me. Does she want this wedding or not? I don't know how to start a conversation. Okay, I'll figure it out on the spot. I'll see if I can get her to like me. She doesn't seem very talkative. Jennifer, her parents, and Robert's parents are all seated in cozy chairs on the deck. Jennifer? Doris cheered. Here comes Robert. Take a walk. It's a beautiful morning. You'll be distracted. It will do you both good. Jennifer was silent, put down the book she was reading, and stood up. Do you mind going for a walk? Asked the young man. The girl nodded silently. They walked along the deck of the motor ship. The wind was developing Jennifer's dark hair. She tossed it back every now and then. I see. Robert was the first to speak, when they were far enough away from their parents. You're not thrilled about the idea of getting married either, are you? I should warn you right away. Without waiting for an answer, the young man continued. I don't love you. My heart is still in love with Melissa, and I'm not going to change my attitude toward life anytime soon. I only agreed to the wedding for my parents. You're the least of the evils my parents offered me in the form of a string of suitors for my heart. If that's the kind of relationship you're comfortable with, I'm fine with it, Jennifer said quietly, a smile tugging at the corners of her lips. You're the candidate, is it? Robert was surprised. Yeah, Jennifer agreed. I'm sick of my parents too. I know you're indifferent to me, so you won't qualify for anything. In turn, I won't bother you with my problems either. We'll live our lives as we used to. We'll have a perfect family. Almost nothing will change except the stamp in the passport. You spend most of your time at work. I'll also work, but I promise to be able to create a home cozy. I'm a good cook, by the way. I don't need money for maintenance. I earn good money myself. But why do you need me? He couldn't understand how she could be so calculating. You can meet true love and find your happiness, and if it happens after our marriage, and you meet a man you love with all your heart, we'll have to divorce. I'm fine with that. Jennifer shrugged. Don't worry, I won't be interested in anyone else. I know how to be faithful. You won't have to fight off my suitors. I promise you that. So you're marrying me on purpose? If that's what you think, then that's what it is. Explain it to me. Robert grabbed Jennifer's arm and turned her around. Why do you agree with everything? It's my nature. She didn't even try to get out of his arms. She just squirmed, not knowing what to expect from her fiancé. I'm used to agreeing to everything, and I like solitude as much as you do. That's why we'll be good together. We won't interfere with each other. But that's not right. Robert shook her gently, trying to meet her gaze, but she avoided looking at him. You're young, you're beautiful, you must dream of love. All girls think about it sooner or later. You're hurting me. The young man loosened his grip. Jennifer freed himself from his arms. Let's just stand and look at the sea, shall we? See. She stretched her hand out into the distance. Dolphins always dreamed of seeing them. They stood in silence for a long time, looking at the sea. Already in the evening, alone in the cabin, Robert could not sleep. The conversation with Jennifer did not go out of his head. She was strange, he thought, lying with his eyes open. She wasn't interested in what her parents had come up with for the wedding. She didn't ask what guests would be there. She didn't even argue with the candidate of the witness. For the first time I see such a girl. Why does she behave like this? What is she hiding? Jennifer intrigued him more and more. On the third day, in the evening, he himself invited her to go out. Her parents looked at each other meaningfully, smiling happily. You don't have to study me at all. Jennifer remarked, I feel fine with a book in my hands. We don't owe each other anything. It's a lovely evening. I don't feel like sitting in the cabin. Robert was quiet for a while. I've been meaning to ask you for a long time, but I've never had the chance. I remember you and Melissa were good friends. You know the truth, don't you? I know some things, of course, but I'd like to hear Melissa's story from you. I suddenly realized I could trust you. Tell me everything you know about her. I don't know anything, she protested. She didn't tell me much, and we weren't really close friends. She liked to have fun, and I preferred to spend my evenings at home and work a lot. I think you do. Robert insisted, but you don't want to tell me so as not to upset me. I really need to know the truth. This year I lived as if in a dream. I didn't want to see or hear anyone. I experienced everything in myself. I tried to forget and could not accept the loss and the fact that Melissa was not alone on that tragic day. I didn't want to believe that she was lying to me. I didn't want to talk about it. Jennifer had withdrawn into herself again, withdrawn as if she had hung a barn lock on the door of her soul. Robert groaned with frustration, slammed his fist against the rail of the boat. Of course, it was rolling around in his head. She won't say anything, she'll keep quiet, and I'll never know anything. How hard is it to live in ignorance? But she surprised him. I know. Jennifer suddenly spoke. But Melissa has been gone for 1.5 years. It's all in the past. Why reopen it? I need to know the truth. I beg you, tell me everything you know. I don't think you'll like what you're asking me. I don't think it will make you feel any better. And then she got quiet. After what you hear, I don't think you and I are going to work out. But why? If you were in my shoes, wouldn't you want to know the truth? He asked. I suppose I would at first, but then, now I'd give anything not to know. You don't know what you're asking me to do. Jennifer, please. Robert begged. Don't bore my soul. There hasn't been a day that I haven't thought about Melissa. I still can't believe she cheated on me. Somehow I trust you, and I know that you won't lie to me, that you'll tell me the truth. Even if I don't like the truth, I have to know it. No. Jennifer suddenly stood up. Not now. I'm tired and I want to go to my room. Don't torture me with questions. It's hard for me to remember. Jennifer, imagine how I've lived these last 1.5 years. I wake up thinking about why she went to the club that night. Who was that man? What attracted her to him? I fall asleep and torture myself with thoughts that I too am to blame for her death. Maybe I said or did something wrong. And I'm tired as hell, torturing my heart with questions, with no hope of an answer. If you can explain what was going on behind my back, help me. I'd do anything for you to get answers to my questions. Jennifer, I swear to you that nothing will change between us. Unfortunately, my confession will change everything. The girl looked at him sadly. Are you hoping I'll tell you the truth and it will ease your pain? I assure you it won't. Is it really that important to know whether Melissa cheated on you or not? Robert nodded silently, his gaze fixed on Jennifer. Yes, she was. Is that what you wanted to hear? With this guy who found her, or with someone else? I don't know. I don't know anything about him at all. Does that make you feel better? No. I guess it just got worse. I warned you, the truth doesn't make you feel better. I'm sorry, I'm gonna go to my room. Enough revelations for today. The girl left quickly. Robert locked himself in his quarters and spent the rest of the day alone. How strange, he pondered as he lay in bed. The news that Melissa wasn't faithful to me doesn't hurt so much anymore. I guess I've just gotten used to the idea. I'm much more interested in something else now. If Jennifer knew about Melissa's cheating, who else knew about it? Did it turn out like that anecdote? Everyone knew about the wife's cheating except the cheating husband. And if everyone knew, why didn't anyone open up to me about it? Jennifer knew and didn't say a word. What could I possibly have a beef with her? She and I barely knew each other at the time, and she preferred not to talk to anyone. She always kept to herself. But we had a lot of friends in common with Melissa, and no one said anything. Even my best friend, who talked to her a lot, didn't say a word. So what do I want from Jennifer? Jennifer. Robert smiled involuntarily. I've been thinking about her a lot lately. He pictured her touching smile, the sadness in her brown eyes, her fragile figure. It had been a burden to her to know that Melissa was deceiving me. How did she carry it all inside her? I wonder if Jennifer shared Melissa's secrets with anyone. No, it wasn't like her. She wasn't the chatty type. Robert closed his eyes and tried to sleep. Then he opened his eyes abruptly. No, I can't sleep. He sat up in bed. I'm going to go to Jennifer and make her finally tell me everything. What's the use of putting off an explanation? It's better to find out right away, to dot the I's and cross the T's. I can't wait till morning. So what time is it? He turned on the light and glanced at the clock. It's 2:00 in the morning. She's asleep, of course, but I can't wait till morning. I have to ask her now. She must understand me. Robert dressed hastily and tiptoed to Jennifer's cabin. He stopped in front of the door and listened. It was quiet. "Jennifer?" The young man spoke in a loud whisper and knocked gently on the cabin door. "Jennifer, please open the door. Don't be afraid, it's Robert. I need to talk to you right away." Robert listened again. The door was silent. He knocked more insistently. Suddenly, the lock clicked and the door opened. "What are you doing here?" Squinting against the bright light, the frightened girl asked. "Did you see what time it was? Why the hell are you breaking in the middle of the night? Are you awake too?" he asked, noticing her tear-stained eyes. "What business is it of yours? What do you need? Didn't your parents explain to you as a child that it's unseemly to pry into an unmarried girl's room at night? I don't want to get sentimental. We need to talk urgently," shortly answered the young man. "Let me go. I don't want to be caught at this late hour." "Come in." The girl opened the door, wrapped in a silk robe. She immediately climbed into bed and covered herself up to her chin with a blanket and pointed to a chair in the corner of the cabin, a decent distance away from her. "Is she afraid of me?" Robert wondered, noticing that Jennifer was trying to stay away from him. "So what do you want from me?" "Jennifer, I am neither a psychologist nor a physiognomist, but I immediately realized that besides cheating on Melissa, you are hiding some other secret. I want to know about it. Have you revealed it to anyone else?" Tears ran down the girl's face. "Don't cry, please." The man moved to the bed, took her hand in his. She squirmed, but didn't remove her hand. "Tell the truth. It will make you feel better. I can see something's bothering you. You and I will soon be husband and wife, and I don't want any misunderstandings between us. Don't be afraid to tell me. Believe me, nothing will change between us." "I can't," Jennifer whispered, swallowing her tears. "I just can't. You have no idea how much this will change everything." "Jennifer, I promise. Everything I hear will stay forever within the walls of this cabin. No matter how much I feel hurt by your words, I swear I will not retaliate. If you fear I will retaliate for the truth about Melissa, that includes her, does it not? Am I wrong? I just want to make you feel a little better. This secret's gonna kill you. You need to tell someone. Look at me." He made her look up at him. "You can trust me, okay? Believe me, I'm not your enemy. You don't know what you're asking, so tell me. I want to know the truth, okay? I don't want to be an ostrich with my head in the sand. I've lived like that for the last year. It's time to let go of the weight of my heart. I'm tired." He was so convincing that Jennifer couldn't stand it anymore, she spoke up. "You're right in saying that Melissa and I were friends. Not just friends, classmates. Sisters, perhaps, even, because we were so close. We did homework together, often spent the night at each other's houses, like best friends should." Jennifer didn't look at Robert. She was concentrating on the blanket, which gave away her inner turmoil. I loved her and trusted her immensely. She seemed to love me too. I admired her courage, her looseness, and I wanted to be like her. She drove the boys crazy and told me about her affairs. I envied her because I was afraid to even look in a boy's direction. Yes, we were close, though very different. The girl sobbed, and the young man took her hands in his soothingly. "Jennifer," Melissa stretched sweetly, pulling away from her textbook. It won't be long now before we finally graduate. 11 years had flown by so quickly, they haven't flown by yet. That's reasonable, Jennifer remarked. You're as stupid as your mother. Guess who my adoring wife will believe? Jennifer sat silently with her head bowed. Every word her father said hurt her. What did you think, daughter? War is war. If you keep quiet, everything will stay the same. And if you don't, but you've already realized what awaits you and your mother, you think I'm kidding? Be thankful I'm not going to divorce her, even though I'm sick to death of her. One more thing. Now that you know everything, Melissa will live with us while your mother's away on business, and God forbid you do anything to reproach her. It's my decision. If you don't like it, get out of my house. I've put up with both of you for too long already. Darling, suddenly they heard the purring voice of Melissa, and both of them shuddered. How much longer are you going to deal with your daughter? I missed you. The girl was in a pink, semi-transparent pajuara, which did not hide the appetizing forms of the seductress. On the contrary, attracted the man's gaze, igniting his desire. We're done now, aren't we, Jennifer? Without embarrassing his daughter, Jack kissed his mistress passionately. Good night, daughter. Remember my words. Jack gently placed his hand on the round buttock of the beauty, squeezed it. Melissa shrieked merrily. The man kissed her again. Finally they left. Jennifer sat still, only flinched when the bedroom door slammed shut. Robert swallowed nervously, squeezed Jennifer's hand, which he never released from his grasp. Tears fell down Robert's arm. He realized how much pain every word was causing Jennifer, gently pulled her against him. If it's hard for you to talk now, let's postpone the conversation until tomorrow. The young man suggested, I have already regretted 10 times that I woke you up. No, she recoiled from him. I've been carrying all this inside me for too long. I have to get free or my heart will be torn to shreds. She took a breath and spoke again. I was so scared. I was afraid to confess to my mom because I was afraid my dad would carry out his threats and we would be left on the streets. And then I knew that Mom really loved him very much. I did not want to interfere in their relationship, did not want to destroy my mom's illusions, happy family life. The girl was silent for a long time. Am I a coward? She quickly glanced at the young man. Are you judging me? Of course not. He stroked her hand. She withdrew into herself again for a long time. What happened then? Robert asked quietly to bring Jennifer out of her deep thoughts, and then the nightmare began. Every time Mom went away on a business trip, Melissa came to spend the night. They didn't have to hide anymore. As soon as my dad got home from work, Melissa would show up. They'd stay in the bedroom until morning. They didn't notice me, like I was nothing. I didn't talk to my father much. I didn't leave my room much at all. They enjoyed each other's company. And you, how did you put up with all this? What could I do? I went to my room and had to watch in silence as my father openly cheated on my mother with my best friend. And you never spoke to your father again. Didn't try to talk some sense into him. It was like he'd lost his mind. Jennifer said slowly, You know I feared him and hated him. With Melissa in his life, he became a total stranger to me. And now too, Melissa is gone, but the fear, it's still there. I live under a sword of Damocles, a sense of danger that won't let go. My father keeps his guard up. I try not to be alone with him. Sometimes he'll look at me like that, like an X-ray, and he'll see everything I'm thinking. How long has this been going on? Robert asked. Did they see each other for a long time? Fortunately, if I may say so, not very long. Melissa got pregnant. I don't know why, But she didn't tell her parents who the father was. They decided she was going to have the baby, and while it wasn't too noticeable yet, took her to another city. My daddy was only glad. Apparently he was fed up with her, or maybe he was afraid of the responsibility. Because if Melissa talked, he'd have to come clean. He was aware of the consequences. Jennifer was silent. What happened next? I don't know. The girl answered. The school year ended. Melissa didn't come back. I went to university, and I chose a different city to study in, so that I could live away from my father and not meet Melissa. Then I got a job there. I didn't plan on coming home at all, ever. It was hard for me to see my mom, who continued to admire my husband. I hated seeing my father. I wanted to forget everything. And yet you came back. It just happened. Jennifer furrowed her brow tensely. My job had been downsized, and I had been fired first, even though I'd had no complaints. And I've worked longer than most people. My mom says I'm shy. First we have to pass our exams. Then we can say goodbye to school. Hey friend, can I sleep over tonight? What's wrong? This is the third night in a row you've stayed over. I'm not sorry, of course, especially since Mom's away on business again, but it's still weird. Why don't we sleep at your place? I'm sick of my dad's remarks about what I didn't do. He'll always find something to pick on. Our parents are in trouble again. Melissa wrinkled her nose. I don't want to stay at home and listen to their quarrels. They always share something, and I get hit, as if it's my fault that they got married and gave birth to me. Okay, stay. Jennifer agreed. You'll help at home. We'll manage everything together, and it's more fun together. In the evening, the friends talked for a long time and fell asleep late. Jennifer was awakened in the middle of the night by a vague feeling of unease. Melissa? She whispered into the darkness. She reached out her hand and realized that the girl was not beside her. Melissa, where are you? Jennifer sat up in bed, listening. A minute passed, another. Her friend did not appear. Where had she gone? Getting up, Jennifer muttered. Did she get lost? Is she stuck in the toilet? Yawning, she walked to the kitchen, slapping the floor with her bare feet. Strange, it's dark everywhere. There's definitely no one in the bathroom and no one in the kitchen. Pushed by a vague premonition, she cautiously opened the door to her parents' bedroom. Melissa. Involuntarily shrieked Jennifer, caught with horror. On the bed in an embrace lay naked Melissa and her father. Dad, how could you? The father, as if stung, jumped up in bed, quickly threw a blanket over the girl lying next to him, with the same speed put on his underpants and rushed to his daughter. What the hell are you doing in the bedroom? How many times have I told you not to come in without permission? He hissed angrily, grabbed her by the hair, and dragged her into the kitchen. He pushed the confused Jennifer into a chair, turned on the light, and fixed his eyes on her face. Remember, you saw nothing. The girl listened to her father, and it seemed to her that in front of her was not her favorite father, but some furious monster with rabid eyes. Try to tell your mother what you saw. I'll destroy you both. Dad, how could you? She's my classmate. Jennifer's lips trembled and tears rolled down her cheeks, covering her eyes, but she didn't wipe them away, afraid to move, lest she anger her angry father even more. The skin on her head burned, but the girl endured. Resentment rising in her heart, Jennifer didn't know how to behave after everything that had happened. What about Mom? Mom? Dad laughed. Your mom doesn't get out on business trips, and I'm a man. I need a woman every day, not once in a while. And the fact that Melissa is young? He hesitated, trying to find the right words. That's the good thing about her. She gives me something I've never gotten from your mother in my life. You have to tell your mother everything yourself, or I will. I'm not gonna let you cheat on her. You can't do something so mean to her. Don't you dare. The father advanced threateningly toward his daughter. And I won't let you hurt her. Mom will kick you out of the house. I'm the one who will kick you out because the apartment is mine. So think before you open your mouth, and your mother won't believe you. She loves me too much, that silly goose, but I'll do everything I can to turn her against you. Believe me, I'll convince her you're lying about me. Mommy won't believe you. Jennifer sobbed, not very confidently. To the bosses need toothy, self-aware workers, and I could not defend myself. So what? You couldn't find a new job? I couldn't get a job quickly. I needed something to live on and something to pay the rent. And then my mom started calling me every day and urging me to come back because she missed me so much. So you came back? Yeah, I was weak again. I let my emotions get in the way. You don't regret coming back? Of course I do. I felt like a sheep to the slaughter, and I couldn't change anything. You're like a snail, always in a shell. That's true. I wasn't very good at showing my feelings before, and I'm not so good at it now. When I'm with my father, I get lost. I can't say a word. It's like I'm paralyzed. At such moments, I see myself again as a 17-year-old girl, intimidated by my father in the kitchen. I can even still physically feel the pain I felt when he dragged me out of the bedroom. Also, it took me a long time to get rid of the mocking look Melissa always gave me as she walked out of my parents' bedroom in the mornings. If someone else had told me that story, I never would have believed it. Robert spoke thoughtfully. I've been watching your family. Your father is very good to you, and I never thought he could be cruel. Oh, yes, said the girl, grinning. Sometimes I think I'm crazy, that all my fears are a figment of my imagination. Father acts as if nothing had ever happened. He's back to the kind and caring father I knew him to be before I met Melissa, and his love affairs are just something I made up. I almost believed I was imagining it myself, until one day Melissa came home. So she was out of town the whole time. Yeah, I didn't know anything about her all those years. I cut all ties with her after high school. I didn't realize I'd have to see her again. She came back a couple of years after I did. I was sure my father wouldn't see her again. And for a while Melissa had fun with other men, changing them like gloves, easily breaking hearts, manipulating the feelings of fans in love. I watched her from afar, hoping that she would leave my family alone forever, waiting for her to finally marry and settle down. Only I was wrong, naively believing that Melissa was thus seeking her feminine happiness. She wanted to make my father jealous. And did he succumb to her charms again? Not at first. I was glad she no longer had power over him. I believed that my father was cured of his morbid attachment to her. And then Melissa met you. Jennifer glanced quickly at Robert and hid her eyes again. You were such a beautiful couple, and I had a hope in my heart that Melissa had finally found her womanhood. She looked truly in love. I had already decided she was settling down. All that was before you met her was meaningless youthful fun. Family life must be a lot to live up to. I thought she loved me too. I never doubted my feeling for her. I'd tear anyone's throat out for her. And like all lovers, Jennifer smiled sympathetically. Hadn't you noticed that Melissa is not what you thought she was, enchanted by her beauty and intelligence? You can't take that away from her. My father didn't mind Melissa's slight infatuations. He realized that she was deliberately trying to hurt his feelings and make him jealous. Both she and he knew what was going on. The rest of us were completely unaware that a love affair was unfolding in front of everyone's eyes. But with you, Melissa was about to get married. He realized that Melissa would soon be out of his reach, and forbidden fruit is always sweet. So Dad had another affair with her, which is exactly what your fiancé was counting on. How hard it must have been for you to see all that and not be able to stop. You're right. I couldn't bear to see my father and my girlfriend, and I felt sorry for my mother. She had no idea what was going on behind her back. They both stopped talking. Did you know Melissa was pregnant? Robert asked suddenly. Unfortunately, yes. She sat with her head down again, her voice low and sympathetic. I only found out by accident, and after Melissa was dead. The girl fell silent. It was hard for her to speak. Jennifer woke up early, habitually shaved her way to the kitchen to make her parents' breakfast. She was stopped by her father's muffled voice coming from the kitchen. "What are you going to do? Raise me?" Jack said irritably into the phone. "It's too late. I'm a big boy, but don't tell me that you've never had a mistress." The girl froze, realizing that it was Melissa, although her father had not mentioned any names. "There, you don't need to conscience me at all. I understand perfectly well. There's nothing to worry about. I assure you, I'm not going to marry her." "Yeah, well, that's just the way it is. Could you have held out?" "Neither could I. Don't you know how these things are done? For money, any midwife will do the best." Jennifer went cold. Melissa is pregnant? The father wants to send her for an abortion? What a rascal! The girl shook with fear of being seen, but she forced herself to listen to the conversation to the end. There's no problem anymore. Jennifer heard that the father was beginning to lose patience. The problem solved itself. I didn't understand what Dad meant at the time, and later I learned that Melissa had died. I'm so sorry you had to find out all that. You know, Robert spoke slowly. I refused to believe that Melissa had betrayed me. I loved her so much. Didn't you? I literally idolized her, didn't want to see the obvious. I broke up with my friends who tried to open up to me about my fiancé. Now I know for a fact that there was no kind, sweet, open Melissa. You're right, I made her up. I'm sorry. Jennifer looked at Robert, not daring to look at him, and he was struck by her eyes. There was so much pain and compassion in them that the young man's heart suddenly ached. My family brought you pain. I have always felt a terrible sense of guilt toward you. I didn't know how to open your eyes. It's not your fault. Robert tried to calm her down. Yes, it is, she said stubbornly. I should have told you a long time ago. You probably wouldn't have believed me then, though. She smiled sadly. Melissa was misleading everyone with her charm, and I couldn't help it. Imagine if I came to you and told you that your fiancé was cheating on you. I wouldn't have believed it. That's why I didn't tell you before, but I don't want to keep quiet anymore. It's time to open that boil. She had no right to use you. You don't deserve to be treated like this. Jennifer. Robert looked at her thoughtfully. Explain to me why you decided to marry me. I'm filled with guilt, she confessed. I want to help heal your wounds. I know I can do it. I will be by your side until you finally come to your senses and learn to trust your feelings again. Then you'll meet a woman and you'll love her. And I'll be out of your life because you won't need me. Jennifer. The man squeezed the girl's hands and looked fondly into her eyes full of inexpressible sadness. I don't want you to go. You know, I suddenly realized that I don't need anyone but you. You're extraordinary, amazing. No, she objected. You're feeling grateful right now, but I don't want your gratitude. What do you need me for? I'm withdrawn. I like to be alone. I don't know how to get along with people. You need another wife. You don't know yourself. Robert said affectionately, I see a brave, caring, and defenseless girl in front of me. I want to embrace you, to be your protector, to guard your peace, so that no one would ever dare to hurt you even with a glance. But I can't give you anything. Jennifer answered confused, "You are here beside me. I believe that in time, when we know each other better, we can truly love each other. It's the pity in you that speaks for a girl hurt by fate." Jennifer shook her head sadly. "I don't believe in love, and I don't know how to love. My father killed that feeling in me, destroyed my faith. I'm just a shadow of a real person, and I'm burned out inside. You won't find happiness with me." Me. Robert took her face in his palms and looked directly into her eyes. "Do you believe me?" He saw how the expression of her eyes gradually changed. Among distrust, fear, confusion, suddenly flashed a ray of hope. The young man smiled broadly at the girl. "I believe." Finally, hesitantly, she whispered, "Then we'll definitely succeed." They stepped out onto the deck, breathing in the cool sea air. They stood in each other's arms, looking up into the endless starry sky. They had found peace and freedom by finding each other through fate. The unwanted wedding was the beginning of a bright new life for both of them.
Subscribe and click the bell. Behind this psychiatric clinic in the city, and in general in the region, have long been bad rumors, like what happens in horror movies, and Michael had certainly heard about it. And when his mother and grandmother found out that he is an excellent student, and a graduate of medical school goes there to work as an orderly, one of them waved his hands. "Grandson, you're the only man left in the family. Don't go there. Michael, you know I'm from an ancient noble family. I may not have 1 million, but I'll find the money to pay for your internship abroad." "Grandma, what money? What abroad? I have to make my own way, just like my grandfather." And the boy nodded his head at the portrait of his grandfather hanging on the wall. And indeed, Michael had someone to look up to. His grandfather was a famous surgeon, and his father, who died in Afghanistan, blew himself up on a mine, saving the military. And so he decided to become a doctor, but not a surgeon like his grandfather and father, but a psychiatrist. Why psychiatry? My mother joked in the first year of school, "But Mom, if the body my grandfather and father studied, so to speak, in detail, then psychiatry is a real field for research, a Klondike." Yes, you're a researcher. I hope. Psychiatry isn't contagious. Oh, Mom, don't worry. It's not like it's the flu or anything. Maybe I can find my own unique method of therapy for mentally ill patients. Yeah, and bring people like Chikatilo back into society. "So Adriana, please don't bring it up," said the grandmother, stepping in for her grandson. The case of this serial maniac was then on the rumor, and the whole country was following him. But the mother reacted too painfully to her. Michael understood her because her own sister Adriana, and his own aunt, the only close person, killed by an unknown assailant, and the culprit was never found. The investigator then said that it could be a maniac, but now in many women saw negative elements of society, especially if they stayed in such institutions as their own city institution for the mentally ill. "Mom, you are an adult, and you understand that it is better to treat such people, recognize them as sane, and then pass a sentence, than to spend money on them to keep them in such houses as ours for years. And you're still defending him." The mother was outraged, but she knew her son's temper. "Michael, you're just like your father, just as stubborn. All right, but don't complain to me about anything. Adriana, don't worry. My grandson will complain to his legal grandmother." "You mean me?" Betty gently ruffled the thick red curls of his favorite grandson. "Grandma, but I'm not a boy anymore. Not a boy, but not yet a husband. So listen to your mother, but also to me sometimes." So they lived in the old Tsar's house, where they had a 5-room apartment with its own fireplace and a large library, luxurious balconies, which still kept traces of the old stucco. This house was in the very center of the city, stood on a small hill, and was considered one of the elite in the city. For it, even many rich men and millionaires, even one criminal. Authority gave crazy money for the family to sell their apartment. "No way," said Betty's grandmother, who was considered the head of the family and whose word was final. "This apartment will serve my great-grandchildren and great-great-grandchildren. So just stop asking me stupid questions like if I want to sell the apartment and leave me alone." That's all she said a few years ago to a city criminal mastermind. And strangely enough, but after that they really didn't bother them anymore. They didn't even start organizing invasion raids, as it often happened in those times. That's how they lived. Michael, dreaming of becoming a famous psychiatrist, and his mother and grandmother, whom he madly loved and idolized. No, there were girls in his life, and even an older woman, but he loved few. Yes, there was a crush, even a feeling like love, but nothing serious. He went on studying, falling in love, dating. Now he was interning at a psychiatric clinic in their town. Yes, they had talked the most horrible and heartbreaking, up to the fact that their orderlies and doctors have fun with mentally ill beauty. But no one could prove it. "What do you want me to do?" Michael asked his old friend Benjamin, who told him all this. "Do. I really have to go over the border, as my grandmother says. But you know, you'd have to sell the last of it. And what would I do in that prosperous Europe? And you realize their methods and ours are probably incompatible. So that's where it stands. I'm already used to the realities of our medicine and psychiatry, in particular, as well as methods of therapy. What's a handful of pills? I'd rather have a shot in the vein, or even for some freaks in general. Orbital lobotomy. You're a bloodthirsty Benjamin. I'm way ahead of you. Aha. That's why I went into dentistry, so I could yank my patient's teeth with a vengeance." And the guy was soon making a grimace that made them both laugh. A healthy laugh. Crooked faces like first graders. It was normal. In their practice, doctors, they are such and black humor that help them endure the specifics and difficulties of the job. Often the lack of weekends, when there is no one on shifts, and you do all the work for 3 people so you cannot die long, or even go crazy and become like his future charges patients in a psychiatric clinic. Yeah, Ethan, I probably should have chosen dentistry like you, and my grandmother insisted that my senior year I choose dentistry or gynecology. But that's just not my thing, you know. I see, Michael. Then you'll have to go to me for dental care and one of our girls for gynecology. I'll give you a headache. All right, buddy, I gotta go home. I gotta get ready for my first day of private dentistry tomorrow. I'm on the phone for now." Michael nodded, and after shaking hands, they parted ways. He had to go to his mental hospital tomorrow. Then, it was worth it to come home early, to pack a bag, and for once, not to sit in front of the TV until night, to sleep. Already at home he had dinner and brewed himself a fragrant tea. Michael sat down at the computer, an old computer brought from Europe, but still capable of much computer brought to him under the order from a friend of his grandmother for his birthday. When Michael was in his second year of study, and the guy's joy was unbounded. "Grandma, this is a real treasure." Luckily, the guy had no limit. And now he sat down at the computer, started the system, and connected the internet. Yeah, the internet is power. The ability to communicate with the world, to learn a lot. And now he decided to keep his own electronic diary of his internship at work, including everything he saw and heard, what methods were used, and what the doctors achieved. Maybe I'll even write a dissertation based on this diary. Not many secrets this asylum hides. Is this your institution for the mentally ill? Grandma came into the room and put a tray with a huge tea and sweet spoons on the table. Yes, Grandma, I'm thinking of keeping a diary. Maybe I'll see something interesting, and there are strange things going on in your almshouse. Grandma, do you know something? Tell me, please. I know something. Betty sat down on her grandson's bed and thought about it. That sometimes I see girls and young women in weird outfits, but they also have ribbons in their hair. Grandma. Well, the outfits are ordinary. Hospital outfits. Maybe some suits came from humanitarian aid. And the ribbons? Maybe one of the nurses got sick. No. Grandson something else. Outfits. Grandma thought for a moment. And then said, you know, like in adult movies, a dress, short stockings, and netting. Somehow the guy raised an eyebrow in surprise. Strangely, he had passed by this place many times, but he hadn't really paid attention to the patients. His grandmother, on the other hand, did. She looked at her grandson carefully and then continued. And about the ribbons, you know, they're weird too. How can I explain it to you? Well, what caught your attention? Just tell me the first thing you noticed. The guy felt like a detective, but he was already wondering what his astute grandmother had seen. Betty pressed her lips together and then gave out. They're red with glitter. So what? Grandma, it's bright and beautiful. I guess crazy people like that. I don't know about that. You know, in my time, so to speak, pre-revolutionary ribbons like this were stuffed in the hair of girls of easy virtue in brothels. And here, they'd walk around like that, and they'd be highlighted with ribbons, so to speak. It's not human. You shouldn't make the poor and disadvantaged look like the poor and disadvantaged. Ugh. And also such ribbons flew hair only young and beautiful. Grandma, you're my Agatha Christie. Really, how many times have I walked by and just not paid attention? It's impossible not to pay attention to such an inferential outfit. All right. Well, I take what you said, and I'll pay attention. Maybe I'll uncover some kind of world conspiracy. And the guy smiled his beautiful smile, but he didn't know how close he was to the truth. This hospital was a place for the mildly insane. As the doctors would say, those who didn't require enhanced confinement. That's why the patients could walk by themselves in the equipped yard of the institution, awarded with a fence. But the guy would learn about it later, when he would encounter the most horrible and disgusting thing that could happen in his professional life. Monday turned out to be surprisingly sunny and similar, especially after a night of threatening rain and rain that walled the city. Yes, Michael thought. Waking up in the night and looking out the window to rain like that could wash away the whole city and my psychotic charges with it. But the morning was clear and sunny, and there was practically nothing left from the traces of rain, except for broken branches and leaves on the ground. Yeah, it's a lot of work for a janitor, the boy said aloud. That's right, said the janitor of the Sheck grandmother Sophia, who has been cleaning the yard. Since 5 o'clock, she's already cleaned so much, and still waving and waving the broom. Good luck to you. And the guy, throwing his backpack on his shoulder, went to his new place of practice. On the approach to the psychiatric clinic, the guy decided to walk around it a bit, on the other side, so that he could see the place where their patients usually strolled, and to pay attention to what his grandmother was talking about yesterday. Indeed, there were several girls walking in the courtyard, dressed in very revealing outfits with brightly colored ribbons in their hair. But the strangest thing was not only the orderlies, but also the head doctor and his 2 deputies were standing aside. They looked at their charges and smilingly discussed something. And the head doctor was looking at Kathy, a new patient who had been brought in a few days ago, a victim of hypnosis, or rather a failed experiment of a psychopath. A doctor who practiced his trance technique on her. Yeah, the guy thought. Such things happen in the practice of doctors. As the grief doctor told the law enforcers, this method he tried to muffle her inner hunger. What kind of hunger? One of the investigators asked the doctor. Sexual hunger. She was just obsessed with men, always wanting sex. I tried to bring her back to a normal life, although so far I had to cure her with this method by my refinement, to cure her. Or maybe it was just you decorating her like that. I was saving her from herself. The doctor was sure he was doing good. But, as Michael thought to himself, having heard the girl's story and the doctor's testimony, he was no less crazy than his victim, whom he had turned into a vegetable. Yes, thought the new orderly from one prison, or rather office, psycho, experimenter to the clinic, or rather, a study, a psycho, an experimenter in a clinic where she was looked upon as a subject of pleasures and possible molestation. Well, if you've got your eye on her, I'm gonna have to keep an eye on you, Kathy. Now I realize my grandmother was right about something. You don't dress patients like that. This isn't a catwalk, it's a clinic. Michael took out a pack of cigarettes and smoked, even though he'd only dabbled before. As his downstairs neighbor, Uncle Benjamin, who'd been in the camps for years, would say, he was translating product, also a colorful type. The guy remembered about him. But in reality, as he was an Urka and a political prisoner in the past owned such a 3-room apartment. Michael even once asked him jokingly, who will get your chambers and jacuzzi? To which he replied, squint your eyes at him. Don't be jealous. I won this house with my teeth. And the neighbor showed his not too healthy strong teeth. Don't look at my teeth. I can still do a lot. And the apartment is my mother's inheritance, not the state's. Believe me. Uncle Benjamin, but you don't have children. Who told you I don't? I had a daughter, but she died in childbirth. So there's only one beloved grandson. But why doesn't he visit you? Where is he? Do you even know? Because he lives abroad. My daughter married an Arab. She fell in love and went to the Emirates. To tell the truth, she lived like a cheese in butter. I wouldn't give her that. But I guess you have to pay for everything. And I guess she paid the price when she gave birth. I'm sorry, Uncle Benjamin, I really didn't know. Hold on. There's a grandson. Have you even seen him? Yes, he came to my daughter's funeral. To her grave, to be exact. She converted to Islam and was buried on the day she died. So I only got the grave. I'm sorry. You're welcome. My grandson's growing up and my daughter's husband calls me and shows me his grandson via video link. He keeps asking me to come over, but I can't leave the house. Yes, and here I am among neighbors as my own and smiling through tears. Neighbor went to his apartment. Michael stood smoking under the fence net and did not understand why he remembered him. But fate would once again bring the neighbors together in this case, albeit in a very unusual way. And now Michael stood smoking, looking, and could not make a step and continue his way. Maybe throw it to hell under his nose, said the guy. And then he almost jumped. On his shoulder lay the hand of William, the lead doctor, clinic, and supervisor of Michael's practice, who had seen the guy get off at the bus stop, how he had smoked, stopping under an old lime tree. And as he watched a group of paramedics walking in the courtyard of patients of doctors, laughing them among themselves, probably at some oily joke. Who are you gonna leave? Certainly not the practice at our fun and games place, but I think you're overdoing it on the fun and games. No, it's definitely that kind of black doctor humor. It is so, sort of so humor. The doctor smiled and took his ward under his arm and led him towards the psychiatric hospital, slowly but surely moving him towards the horrors that were going on inside its walls. The doctor had already made the decision to either involve Michael in his games or simply deprive him of his sanity if he did not agree to participate. Why him? It's simple. Michael is a new man in their collective one not so long ago, by chance, and he's strong for his age, plus handsome. Here is such a boy handsome, which is exactly suitable for filming spicy movies. Already in the clinic, the head doctor Noah and William took him through all the buildings, floors, and wards. Yes, the views are not the best, and emotions are not the brightest. Why should he be surprised, though? He knew where he was going. Michael was tormented by his grandmother's reasoning, but he knew if he asked that question directly, he'd be laughed at. But at the most, he'd get suspended. And the guy would never find out. Noah asked Michael over tea at the resident. There are all sorts of rumors about this clinic, in particular, mystical rumors. What do you have to say about that? Oh, Michael, you're a medical student, but you talk like a philology student who wants folklore. Or are you afraid of the ghost of the old Empress or Mother? The Mother Superior who drowned a truck in our pond at night. There's even a pond here. The boy's amazement was unparalleled. How long has he lived here in this town? I knew of clinics in the neighborhood, but the fact that there's also a pond. Remember the old movie about the Three Musketeers? Well, we have a lively pond just like that. It was organized by the previous head doctor. His wife worked as a landscape designer. So they set it up. We have a lily pond here. It's beautiful. There were fish swimming in it, but I guess our climate didn't suit them. They died out over the winter. But our patients don't care whether they're fish or lilies. And Ethan, an orderly with huge fists and a face resembling a tango arena, laughed as Michael's laughter made him shudder, and the doctors simply did not pay attention to him. And why do they tolerate such people in the clinic? Although on the other hand, there are some violent people who can't be subdued without physical force. Yeah, but Ethan's rudeness sometimes got to Michael, as did the thought of having to work with someone like that. Ethan, you show Michael to your office, where he can change his clothes, leave his things in the lockers and all that. He's only here for a couple months, so to speak, a couple months internship. But it's still got to be determined. Ethan nodded his head and waved his huge fist at Michael. Michael didn't show his displeasure. Let it be. A couple of months could be tolerated. And then he was promised to be taken to the second city as a staff psychiatrist, so he didn't worry about it too much. Michael obediently went down to the basement with Ethan and went to the very back of the clinic. Here, the orderlies had set up a room for a locker room and a kind of sports corner where you can hit a punching bag and play chess and dominoes. Don't be shy. Michael, take any locker that's not open. We have a lot of open seats right now, so let's get settled in. Why do so few people want to work at the clinic? Michael started asking questions from afar. I mean, who wants to hang out with a psycho? A lot of people think of it as a contagion. Being a psycho too. I just don't know any other job. Although at one time, just like you, I studied medicine. What did you study for? An orderly, that's what I studied. And my uncle put me to work here. My uncle. He's Noah. You've seen him. He's our chief of medicine. Good acquaintances, the boy thought, but he didn't say anything. Michael changed his clothes and began to get ready for his shift. The shift went relatively smoothly, and the next morning, the guy threw his backpack on his shoulders and left the clinic building. The sun was shining brightly, and there was nothing to portend any trouble, and all the things he had changed his mind about yesterday. Michael, it seemed like a fairy tale or fantasy. But really, what kind of fairy tales are fairy tales? We live in our developed world with computers, cameras on every corner. Even if there was something going on here, it would have been made public a long time ago. Michael, good morning. William called out to the guy and extended his hand to greet him and got straight to the point. How was your shift? Smoke. I don't smoke. Thank you. Yesterday it was just a dalliance, but the shift. Thank you. Everything went smoothly. William, can I make a personal request if I'm not interrupting something more important? Sure. Yes, of course. Anything I can do. Could you show me that pond you told me about yesterday? Wow. I guess you got caught up in the story last night. Come on. It's in the backyard. I'll show you around. I gotta be honest, you can't see it from the street. It took me a while to find it myself. It's so hidden, it's creepy. Is this place really inhabited? The center of Izhevsk. The doctor looked at him with a slight chuckle and said nothing, but waved his hand and led him deep into the park area of the hospital. Yeah, it's a bit of a wilderness, and that the most strange noise of cars from the street was not heard, although the clinic itself was located at the crossroads of quite busy central city roads. How quiet is it? And strangely enough, you can't hear much traffic from the road. Yes, you're right, Michael. You've noticed it's quiet. And here's the twig itself, and the head doctor spread the branches with his hands and let the boy go ahead. It's beautiful. The 4. Michael opened a pond, laid out of stones behind burned black lilies, around which willows grew. And what was the most amazing thing? There were several statues in antique style of girls, hunting or carrying jugs on their shoulders. He had not seen such statues for a long time. Oh, it's beautiful. And notice the angle and the shot. You could even make a movie. What kind of horror movie have you seen in our cellars? There's no such thing as a cellar. Why? There are some. Yes, imagine that. And they lead to the local Cathedral of the Transfiguration, which is across the street from us. Are these cellars or cellars? I don't know. They lead to the monastery, and they say the monks at our clinic have the right people. And all because it wouldn't occur to anyone to look for a healthy person in a mental institution. Then there's been some kind of collapse in some places. Now these passages are impassable. That's for sure. No one's gonna come in here willingly. And then he noticed on the opposite bank the figure of a girl in a racy outfit. Kathy, he remembered her, because she had been brought here on the day when he had come to see the head doctor and applied for an internship at this clinic. The girl herself was not in the state she was in at the time. She was screaming at the doctors that the psychiatrist wanted to kill her. She's hearing voices and everything. That Kathy suffers from inner voices and a hypertrophied sex drive. Well, that's what her previous doctor said. Who knows? So far, the girl hasn't said a word. Why is she dressed like that? Short dress, fishnet stockings, ribbon in her hair. You know, Michael, it's one of my methods of letting the patient choose what they want. And by the way, where'd you get that outfit? That's a good question. Like many theatrical costumes, it was left to us by a theater. Exactly the theater. The director was jailed for some dark deeds, he and his wife. And the actors just ran away. And since the theater was near us, it's not a waste. And they were all dressed like royalty. Yes, imagining you as Henry Valois or Peter the Great. Michael, you're joking. But by the way, we had a wonderful carnival night here on New Year's Eve. And there was even a story about us in the paper. I hope it wasn't in a good context that a disguised Napoleon was walking around town claiming to be the real chief medical officer. No, we're all understanding people with a sense of humor. So we just hung around the Christmas tree. That one over there, by the way, by the entrance. And you know, people even took pictures with us on New Year's Eve. Yeah, that was fun. Thank you for the tour. I'm gonna go home and get some sleep. Thursday again for 24 hours. Michael, don't try too hard. You can't do all the work. You're a young guy. I nodded my head. But I thought to myself, no, I'm going to get you out of this. I think you're hiding something. Dear head doctor, but you don't need to know that. I had dinner tonight and sat down at the computer. Michael quickly made the first entries in his diary and then began to look for information about the local clinic. And indeed, there was a lot of information about it. Strangely enough, there was a lot of information about it, and with a very negative connotation. Murders, suicides, and strange deaths of both patients and doctors. Yes, there was a lot to work on and a lot to find out. But it was Kathy that bothered him the most. And he thought to himself, why not keep a sneaky eye on her room? The girl herself. Not without reason the head doctor was looking at her with such olive eyes. Grandma, the boy called out to his grandmother. Why did you shop like that? You won't let me watch my favorite TV show. What did you want? Grandma, I saw a girl at the clinic today. She was a victim of an incompetent hypnotist and suffered as a result. But that's not the point. She was wearing the outfit you mentioned, short dress, stockings, and a sash. Not surprising. One of your executives must have had their eye on her. I mean, she's new. She's a young girl too. I take it. So you're going to steal her? No, Grandma. I just want to keep an eye on her room. It's on the first floor, so it won't be a problem. To do anything, you have to have proof. That's what I'm required to do. Really, Michael, I'm old. I'm not going to play Sherlock Holmes with you. I'm more of a Mrs. Hudson. Grandma, that's not what I mean. Just cover for me in front of Mom. I'm gonna go over to the clinic tonight, stake out the windows, so to speak. I found a military A in Grandpa's closet. Okay, if anything, I'll tell Mom you're home already asleep. She's on call today anyway, so she won't be home. But you're my grandson, please. Don't get into any trouble. Okay. Michael nodded his head and poked the old lady on the cheek. He went back to his computer. What's going on at the clinic? How was your shift? The old woman was still interested in how true or not the rumors were. The rumors about the asylum. Yeah, Grandma. It's okay. I told you it was nothing like that. No, it's not. Our head doctor showed me the old pond on the grounds today, the one with the black lilies. Grandma didn't tell me about it. I went there and saw it because the wife of the former head doctor was my friend, and the pond itself is her creation. But the doctor didn't tell you that in the same pond they found the wife of the former one drowned. The guy shook his head, looked at his grandmother in surprise, but there's knee-deep water, and that's it. And this is the strangest thing. Her body was lying with her head in the water. She was submerged in the water, but her arms and legs were lying flat along her torso. They took a sturdy, adequate soldier and put her face down. That's all. And then they found water from the pond in his lungs. No signs of violence on the body. If that's what you're asking, it's odd that she came in, lay down, and swallowed the water to death. Drowned of her own volition. The guy was being sarcastic, but looking at the expression on his grandmother's face, he immediately faltered. Betty did not tolerate unnecessary words and jokes, and therefore immediately warned her grandson. Yes, Michael, death is strange. But if she did it herself, then she had a reason. And maybe even her own husband is the same as your current boss's overbearing. There's nothing to cure them. Maybe, under the old doctor, he and his brothers also had fun with innocent girls. And his wife found out and drowned them both. So, what of it? Or maybe who drowned them? But really, she won't become a ghost of a ghost, will she? Maybe she wouldn't. But believe me, there's something scary going on out there. And I'll tell you honestly, this new girl isn't worth the danger she's bringing upon herself. Trust me. The Brotherhood of Doctors, it's like that. Everyone protects each other. And even if they do something to her, that you can get to the bottom of it. But understand, a doctor will not testify against a doctor. So get on your nerves and leave her in there. At least I'll get her out and save her that way. All right. Michael, don't yell. I hear you. I accept your position. But I'm trying to warn you. You're putting yourself in a lot of danger. I understand all that. That's why I'm telling you where I'm going and what I intend to do. Betty nodded and stood up, heading for the door. She was worried about her grandson, but she realized she couldn't keep the young and hot guy away. So the woman simply stood on the doorstep and turned and said to Michael, "What if you take Uncle Benjamin, our neighbor from the second floor, to help you? He's old, but he's lean. And with his criminal record, he'd be a big help. I'll think about it. But it's not a bad idea. Although I'll tell you right away, I'll have to see for myself, do some recon, and then I'll tell them what's going on. Even if I go to him now, what can I say? Uncle, Benjamin is there in the clinic raping women and many other things. And he'll tell me. Prove it. Just words. And I don't really believe it all myself. Just because a place is weird and old doesn't mean you can't ring all the bells. Yeah, there's too many girls. There's too many crazy people. And there's too many masquerades. But it's all right." And the grandmother left the room, closing the door a little behind her. Michael leaned back in his chair and thought for a moment. Uncle Benjamin is a criminal, but the grandmother is right. His experience and his nose for crime might help him. And an extra set of hands and eyes can always help. But first, you have to go and see for yourself, and then you can go to your neighbor. All right, let's get ready. Michael threw a flashlight and a bottle of water into his backpack. Binoculars with good German optics can take a camera. What for? Basically, there's a cell phone. You can take video and photos with it. Okay, that's fine for the first time. Anyway, I'm not going to go in there. And throwing it on his shoulders, Michael went out into the corridor and began to study. The sounds Betty came out of his room and looked at his offspring carefully. You're coming. Yes, Grandma. Don't worry. I've got the phone, but don't call. I'll call you if I need to. In the meantime, lock it up. I think I'll be on the train in a couple of hours. 20 minutes to get there. An hour and a half and back. 20 minutes. So look, it'll be 3 hours. All right. Grandson, but please be careful. If anything happens to me, your mother will rip my head off. Michael smiled at his favorite person and kissed her. He went outside. It was getting dark. What's so surprising? After work he washed up, then ate and slept, and now full of strength can and observe. The guy smiled, thought to himself that he should have gone not to the doctor, but probably to the investigators. Here is a confirmation of his words. A patrol car passed by and lit up the road with flashing beacons, but it alarmed the guy. No, not the car itself, not the flashing lights. It was the fact that the policeman stopped it around the corner and got out quietly, covering the door. They slammed it shut, as usual, quietly slipped through the hole in the fence of the psychiatric clinic, and went just as quietly, whispering among themselves. Wow. The cops are also in business, and the young medic's bewilderment had no limit. Did these columns, as his grandmother would say, come here too? Wow. Now, it's not just medical malpractice anymore. It's a group of gangs. And that's what he's encountered in practice. Come on. Maybe he just made a mistake, and the police came here on a signal, so to speak, to check what's going on here. But still, these two were acting weird, uncharacteristic. Michael slowly went in the direction of the secret eye. In the fence, jumped in the chassis, hiding behind the dense vegetation, and abundantly growing along this fence. That was a plus right now, and it wasn't exactly a starry night. So the guy slowly crept toward the ominous, overhanging park clinic. This 3-story old pre-revolutionary building was an eyesore in the city. It was going to be demolished long ago, moving the facility to the outskirts. But apparently, it wasn't worth it for the high-ranking officials to go there in search of hidden pleasures. Come on, come in here, quietly said one policeman, and let the other one inside. The basement. Wow, they got the basement entrance open. I wonder who's on shift today. An old orderly with a long history of alcohol abuse, or Liam. Another one of the orderlies with a huge fist. When Michael himself asked about the door to the basement and the padlock, the head doctor secretly smiled and said, "This is the entrance to our basement paradise. And is it like growing marijuana there?" Michael decided to make a joke, but I guess the joke didn't work. The doctor looked at him sideways and said it wasn't pot. It was something else, but it's too early for him to know. Everything will show and tell later. And now they just let outsiders into this forbidden paradise. Maybe they are part-time. Security guards? Michael chuckled under his nose and began to approach the clinic building even more quietly. The windows of the wards on the first floor glowed with a dim light. It was the way the duty lights burned. And the light itself was enough to see what was going on in the wards. The guy intuitively approached the window of the room of the new patient, Kathy, and from surprise, almost dumbfounded on the spot. Guy saw her sitting on the bed, dressed in a short school drill dress and with bows in her hair. Yeah, The guy almost whistled in surprise. And apparently, the girl heard his exclamation and looked out the window. Michael intercepted her gaze for a second. He was devastated. Apparently, she'd been pre-sedated with sedatives. But at the same time, there was a silent plea for help. But then, Liam and the doctor in charge entered the room, and the boy sat down instantly so as not to be seen. Michael sat under the window and listened intently to what was going on in the room itself. He heard the footsteps of two men and the creaking of a bed. Then the words of the head doctor. "Hello, Kathy. You're already dressed as well as you can be. Now let's go down to the basement with me and Liam. You'll find a lot of interesting things there." The basement where the two policemen went. Apparently, they had some sort of organized pleasure nook down there. And that's where they took her, drugged her with psychotropics. But what to do? The guy quietly sank to the ground and put his hands around his head. What to do? What to do? And then the front door creaked and Michael squeezed into the ground. 3 men came out of them and headed towards the basement. Good night was dark, and the yard of the clinic was not illuminated. Therefore, he simply was not noticed. But only the girl turned back, looked in his direction, and cried. Tears rolled silently down her face. Michael heard Noah begin to quietly soothe the girl and told the orderly, "Liam at the school, to her in the basement for another dose of sedative. We didn't want her to wake up at the right moment, and the chief of police wasn't happy with his new doll." "Yeah, sure, Noah. Let's get her in and give her a quick shot." And the trio began to make their way down to the basement. Michael had one single desire: to break into the basement and snatch Kathy out of the hands of doctors and cops. But he realized how impossible that would be. No, he was not intimidated by the company, the doctors and the cops, to do their dark deeds. But he realized they'd just smash him there. And that would be it. And no one will know where his grave is. Call the militia. What will he say there? The head doctor and a policeman raping a mentally ill patient won't believe him. And even if they do, what's next? But the brigade will arrive on a call. And what? Nothing. If the police come to such costume parties, it means that the management is aware of it, and at least the case will be closed. At the most, they can either kill him in the same basement and bury him here or put him in jail for something. I mean, even if it's for abusing Kathy. So think, Michael, think. Maybe you're imagining things. Yeah. And the cops are here for nothing. But at that very moment, the basement door opened and a policeman came running out. "Vasia," he shouted, "I've been away for a couple of hours. There's an emergency at the police station, but I'll be back later. Leave me that girl for later." And the policeman rushed to the car. The guy heard the engine roar and the tires skid across the sand. But the strangest thing was that from the cellar no one answered him, and no one had ever closed the door. It wasn't locked. It's called come in. Whoever wants in and whoever wants out. Whoever wants in and whoever wants out. Michael rushed to the cellars and started to go down the stairs, listening to every sound. But he heard nothing, neither footsteps nor any other sounds. There were supposed to be at least 4 people down there. And they certainly weren't singing lullabies. But maybe it was for the best. The boy opened the cellar door and slipped inside. The corridor was sparsely lit, and there was a pantry open right next to the entrance. The guy peeked into it just in case, to make sure there was no one there. And in case of emergency, he could hide in this room. Yes, there are shelves and bears in principle a place for a hiding place. But at that very moment, at the end of the corridor, footsteps were heard. It was the guest of the night police and the head doctor. The boy immediately recognized the figure of his superior. They were talking quietly about something, and as they approached, the boy could hear what they were talking about. What he heard made him not just overcome, but terrified to the point of truly experiencing fear not only for the poor girl, but for his own life. "Noah, Thank you for the welcome. But you see, the warden's gone. We've had an emergency at the council since this morning. The commission's here, so we're saving Kathy for dessert, so to speak. Yes, you understand correctly. Everything is normal. No excesses or incidents. No one is interested in anything. Yes, in principle, everything's fine. Except we got a new orderly coming in for an internship. We didn't apply for the internship, but he did. So, they're interested in the job, and the clinic in particular. Why are our patients dressed so oddly? Of course, like you said, it's all been blamed on the tour and the theater we had a year ago. And then they disbanded it. But I don't think he believed it. So what do you suggest? Maybe we should press him a little so he doesn't stick his nose where it doesn't belong. No, I think I can handle it. And you know, it's normal to be questioned about our clinic. Michael listened and realized it was about him. His breath cleared, and he even found it hard to breathe. And as luck would have it, the couple stopped near the open door to the storeroom, where the new employee was hiding behind the racks with his colleagues. The policeman looked into the storeroom, but seeing nothing, quietly said to the head doctor, "Okay, Noah, let's postpone our sit-downs for the time being. Lie down while holding this girl. The chief liked her, and the school drill outfit matches. We'll be there in a couple days. In the meantime, we'll be in touch. Call me if you need anything." The head doctor didn't say anything. He escorted the guest outside and returned a couple minutes later. Michael, all these minutes, which seemed like hours to him, sat and did not breathe, although his heart was pounding frantically and was ready to jump out of his chest. And this breathing and heartbeat, it seemed to the lad to be striking a bell in the silence. But there was nothing he could do about it. The boy heard the head doctor pass by his cell and head deep into the corridor, muttering something to himself. After a few minutes, he looked out of the door and, seeing no one, slipped out into the street. He breathed in the cool air of the night and took a few deep breaths in and out and began to make his way toward the dead vine. At the fence, Michael walked slowly, not even looking around, being in slight shock at everything he saw. What could be going on in there? What did I see there? Nothing. Just heard the doctor and the cops talking about something. But I don't know what they were talking about. Maybe it's some kind of videotape as part of a police investigation. The guy was trying to drown out the thoughts that kept popping into his head, and he'd heard of costume parties like this a long time ago. But to have minds devoid of girls and women take part in it, there was no such thing. All right, who am I kidding? Trying to fool. There's definitely something going on in that basement that's scary and illegal, and it's got to stop. Poor girls. He didn't know what to do. He didn't know what to do. He'd have to go to Uncle Benjamin. That old bastard will surely tell him what to do, won't he? How? He'll help. The guy did not notice how he reached the house, how he went up to the floor and opened the doors with his keys, closing them quietly. Michael leaned against the wall and from powerlessness and experience simply slid to the floor. Grandma came out of the room at that moment and flicked the light switch. The bright light blinded the guy. And realized, "Grandma, why are you awake?" He tried to look normal, but apparently the expression on his face told the old lady everything. "Why? You want me to tell you why? What happened? Tell me." "You're white as chalk." "Grandma, I don't want to. I wish I was like this right now. Come on, go take a shower to wash off the negativity. Then we'll go to the table." I spared a cutlet, and I'll pour you one of my own. The guy did not argue and simply went to the bathroom, pulled off all the clothes and scattered them on the way. When in the bathroom heard the sound of water, Betty collected the guy's things and threw them into the washing machine. "No dirt to lay around. I'll wash everything tomorrow." When Michael came out of the bathroom, there was a late dinner and a bottle of tincture on the table. The woman poured him a shot and handed it to him without saying anything. Nor did the grandson ask anything. He took it quietly and knocked it over. All at once. Take the cutlets, mashed potatoes, salad. Let's eat. The guy sat down at the table without saying a word. He poured himself a second shot of olive and tipped it, just as quietly, and started on the homemade cutlets. He ate and thought, should he tell his grandmother of his suspicions? But Betty was not so foolish, as modern young people might think. I take it Kathy had gotten into the local psychiatric brothel and was simply being kept on psychotropic drugs. Michael chewed and nodded his head and simply couldn't drop a word. Not because he was eating, but because he was choked with emotion, and he didn't want to upset his grandmother. But his grandmother was not stupid and immediately realized everything as soon as his grandson entered the house. You know, grandmother, there are not only doctors involved, there are also the police, and most likely, the very top. They came here today, twirled around and left. It's like an emergency in the department. So they didn't stay the night. And this girl. And then Michael shook from the experience. Tears rolled down his cheeks, and he couldn't stop. How could they do that? It's not just they're renting prostitutes, who know what they're in for and where they're going. And all this with mentally ill women. How so? Michael, I get it. That's why I told you not to go there, but you wouldn't listen. And now you've got to figure out how to deal with it. You're not going to go to the police. You said it yourself. The whole chain of command is tied up. So what do we do? You can't go with a machine gun against everyone. You don't have to do it yourself. I told you. Go talk to our neighbor tomorrow. You know, the one below us, Benjamin. He's a thief. He's old school, I think. Plus, he's got a grudge against the police. So if he doesn't help, he'll certainly tell me what to do and who to turn to. The guy nodded his head and poured himself another olive. He drank and couldn't taste it. Slowly he digested all that he had seen and heard, thinking how he should proceed. But Babushkina's spit turned out to be quite strong, and already in half an hour the guy was pecking his nose. Go to bed, my sorrow. Tomorrow mother will come, and you with red eyes sleep. And then I'll cook for you for the evening. Pour the stuffed cabbage. With all this good stuff you'll go and ask your neighbor for advice. Grandma, thank you. I'm going. Michael only laid his head on the pillow, as he was immediately dreaming. He slept and did not dream, though emotions so and so raged inside him. But apparently the young body could handle giving his head a rest. Indeed, he slept until almost lunchtime. And when he got up at 12 o'clock, he found no one home in the kitchen. All he caught was a note from his mother. Say, lunch on the table from his grandmother, stuffed cabbage in her purse, cash in the fridge in the back. We had a snack in Russia too. Michael went down to the second floor and called Uncle Benjamin's apartment. He didn't open the door right away, but he wouldn't let the guys in. Michael, do you want something? Uncle Benjamin, my grandmother gave you Golutsov, and he pointed to the bottle. And then I'd like to talk to you about a sensitive matter. The old one stomped on the doorstep. He liked Betty's stuffed cabbage, and it wasn't nice to say no to a neighbor. It wasn't proper. But he had guests he didn't want Michael to meet. The guy heard he had a stranger as a guest, maybe the lady of his heart, and he's here with his own problems. Uncle Benjamin, if I'm interrupting, I'm sorry, but can I come back later? Yes. Michael, I'm sorry, guest, come back at 8 o'clock. And here's Betty. A special thank you. Her stuffed cabbage is a work of art. Benjamin nodded his head and closed the door gently. Yeah, the stuffed cabbage and cash came in handy. There would be something to feed and drink an old friend. He came unexpectedly, and frankly speaking, the skull's visit surprised Benjamin and made him a little wary. And what does the skull need from old Kogan? And a vagabond. Yeah, maybe our old friend stomping on the doorstep for starters. Hopefully, the doorstep isn't where friends have a business conversation. Oh no, sure, come on in. Except there's nothing to buy. But I did not come here to eat. The restaurant will not feed. If you want strong tea with your girlfriends, I won't refuse. You owe me tea and my girlfriends. When Benjamin went to put the kettle on, the doorbell rang. It was Michael, but not the landlord. Neither did his guests know about it. Both were wary. But since Benjamin had long since retired and felt no guilt, he boldly opened the door. After talking to his neighbor for a few minutes, he returned to the room with the fools and the cash. "Oh, I see the delivery service is working perfectly," joked the Skull. Yes, in the face of the upstairs neighbor. He came in to talk some business, so I brought this to butter the old man up. But I asked him to wait till tonight. In the meantime, try these homemade stuffed cabbage. By the way, and cherry is a delight. The men sat down at the table, poured a shot glass each, and, having drunk, had a snack. And how not to drink, because it would make the conversation easier. Benjamin looked at the old thief in the law and quietly asked, "What brought you to me? You didn't just come 10 years after our last case." "Yes, I did. And for good reason. I'll tell you right off the bat. I was put in charge of this town not that long ago, but I think you already know that. Now, I've heard rumors that young girls and women have been going missing in this town for the last few years. Well, you can blame it on anything, although all roads lead to your local mental institution. You know what I'm getting at? Yeah, I've heard bad things about her too," Benjamin said, and poured another round of shots. "But how can I tell you, Skull? They're just rumors. You know, you can't do anything without proof." "That's true. But in addition to the fact that young girls have been brought into this almshouse and treated for whatever reason, the cops have been frequenting it in recent months. They probably set up a brothel there together with the doctors and have fun there. And how not to party? It's a hell of a roof." "Skull, are you sure?" The old watcher nodded his head and threw a piece of fool into his mouth. He poured himself and his friend a shot for cream. What was there to say? Home-cooked food, still, that delicacy and luxury. And he, as an old thief who had spent most of his life in colonies and prisons, understood that. But that's not what we're talking about now. The daughter of a street Petersburg authority figure is missing. And so far, all roads lead here. You see, Alex's daughter is missing. Well, you remember him. He was on my team. Then he retired. He's got a family, but his daughter's missing. And all roads lead here to this mental institution. Yeah, and you said she could be in that new house. What about him? What did he do? He's been raising his own, and he's almost filed a police report. But nothing. Benjamin sat and thought about it. He really heard from his friends that in the last couple of years young beauties began to disappear and that it was the doctors or the cops who were involved. But that was talk, and no more evidence. But if the daughter of an authority figure has disappeared and the tracks led here, that's serious. Skull, couldn't it be a banal showdown? It's been speculated. But no, that's not it. Is that why I need your help? How long have you lived near this fine establishment in this town? Take a good look, Skull. By the way, Michael, but the guy who came in the other day with these fools, he works there as an orderly. How does he work? I think he's been there a while. But I asked him. That's what we decided. But in the evening, Benjamin didn't even have to ask the guy. 8 o'clock sharp. He was already sitting in his kitchen and drinking strong and sweet tea, which the owner had brewed and put in front of the guy. Come on, complain. Who has offended? What happened? Yes, you see, I only have a son-in-law here. You know, I finished the basic course in my medical school, and now I'm practicing. But guess what? I know our psychiatric clinic. I've complained before. And I warned you, it's gonna be tough out there. But what happened? And by the way, I have a couple questions for you about your psych ward. Later, though. Now, come on, tell me. So my grandmother and some other people said there was something going on there, but I didn't believe it. But my grandmother pointed out one thing to me. They dress. The young and beautiful in short dresses and stockings and braid their hair. And do you know why? Michael looked at his neighbor, and in his throat stood. He couldn't say it out loud, but he knew he needed help, at least in advice, at least in deed. The old thief sat and looked at the guy, realizing that he not only needed to speak out and ask for advice, but the conversation itself was going in the right direction for him. You see, Uncle Benjamin, they raped them there. Maybe they're even videotaping the whole thing. The guy just gasped at his own words and the realization that Kathy was there and what could be done to her. He took a breath and continued. That's why I came. I've heard about this clinic for a long time, but last night I decided to go and look around. But in short, Uncle Benjamin, I saw 2 cops going down to the basement, as well as our head doctor as an orderly, and they were taking a new girl down there. But apparently the cops had some kind of emergency, and they left quickly. But most importantly, I heard one of them telling our head doctor to leave the girl for later. The guy briefed me on the whole thing and looked at the reaction of the old tramp. On his face was read not only surprise, but also interest, especially a last news. Kathy was the name of the daughter of a street Petersburg authority who was considered missing or even killed, almost by order of the opposing gangs. And what does this girl look like? Tell me. I'm sorry, I'm asking you this for a reason. A friend of mine had a missing daughter. Her name was Kathy, and it all leads back to our town. Maybe it's her. The guy thought about it for a minute and started describing her in detail. But the most important feature the guide remembered was a scar on her left ankle. Then he listened and couldn't believe his ears. He knew the street Petersburg authority Alex and his daughter, and the very scar the girl had gotten, falling from a tree. His heart stabbed. Wow, that's how you find an authority figure's missing daughter. That's lucky. But maybe it's not her at all. Michael, why don't you show her to me? But we'll go tonight, when the patients are out on the street. Show it to me gently. But in terms of what's being done to them, we'll have to get into that basement, look in the nooks and crannies. Can you get the key? Michael shook his head negatively, but Benjamin just waved his hand. What can I expect from you? He went into the room and rummaged through the closet. A set of thieves' lockpicks was there. Basically, we can look inside this basement at night. Okay, Michael, when are you going to work? Tomorrow. Well, we'll go together early in the morning. You'll show me from afar the basement, and then if you're psychotic, sorry, patients are walking around. Point your finger at Kathy. They don't go out this early. They only let them out at lunchtime and in the evening. Okay, well, just show me the basement, and then at lunchtime, I'll come to that walk, and you can show me Kathy. But why? Uncle Benjamin, you think she's your friend's daughter. I knew for a fact she was no fool. From your description, it looks like it, but I'll have to see for myself. So, Michael, it would help if you showed her to me. As for proof, I can pick any lock. Just dibs. It's our secret. I'll look, and then, if there's anything interesting, we'll figure out how to proceed. Michael was fine with that, and he calmed down a bit. But then I asked him the same question. What if there is nothing there that can be caught on? Michael, you're like a little child. I know exactly what to look at and what to look for. And then we'll set up a camera and film their antics. The old bastard chuckled, but when he looked at the boy's face, he stopped short. Yeah, I guess he wasn't laughing. Although, if you think about it, it's the height of cynicism to do such a thing as people in white coats and the police cover for them. Yeah, I got a special thing for the police. Plus, if this Kathy brothers thank me very much. Michael, I'm sorry. I guess years in places not so remote haven't made a saint out of me. But I do feel sorry for your charges, especially since some of them were just stabbed with antidepressants and sedatives, and now they're doing this. But that's okay. I'll take a look. We'll set up cameras if we have to. Then I'll report everything to the gang, and they will disperse your gang in no time. Michael listened and understood that the neighbor could do all this. But how to get the whole gang out? Uncle Benjamin. But understand the proof for your friends is good, but the case must be taken to court. Michael, do you take me for a fool? Imagine for a minute, if we're looking for my friend's daughter, he'll make such a scandal. He'll involve everyone he can. Lawyers and press, law enforcement, you name it. But most importantly, your head doctor and his cronies won't get away. That's what I need. Michael closed his eyes and leaned back in his chair. For some reason, he believed this old jailer, although he realized that Benjamin was not without sin. All right, Benjamin, let me show you the loophole in the fence at the entrance tomorrow, and then the cellar itself. And you can come to this vine by 12 o'clock. That's when our patients take their lunchtime walks. I'll try to show you Kathy. Benjamin nodded and sipped from a cup of strong tea. He was satisfied with today. Helping Skull and freeing Kathy would be a big plus for him, and he'd been wanting to mess with the cops for a long time, if they were really nasty in that asylum. Michael got up and went home. It was almost 22 o'clock on the clock. It was necessary to wash and sleep. Tomorrow was a crucial and decisive day. In the morning, Benjamin, already 6:45, stood near the entrance and smoked. He put on a dark, unremarkable suit cap and dark glasses. He pulled up a cigarette and thought about the situation with Michael, Kathy, and this almshouse in general. Uncle Benjamin, hello. Michael greeted his neighbor and extended his hand to him. The man flashed him a cigarette and shook his hand. Quietly, Michael said, "Just call me Benjamin without uncle. I feel like an old man. I'm not young, but I'm not an old man at heart. All right. You ready to go?" He nodded, and the men walked slowly in the direction of the psychiatric clinic, talking among themselves. Like old friends, Michael walked and looked around so as not to catch the eye of the head doctor or one of the orderlies. There was no need to draw attention to himself. Approaching the fence of the psychiatric clinic, Michael looked around carefully and pointed with his hand to the entrance to the basement. This is the basement, and there's an opening further along the fence into the grounds. Just right for you. Just right. Now let's move on. They went further, passing the very gap in the fence, which was so advantageously disguised by the leaves of wild ivy and vines. Michael looked around again and pointed to the platform. In front of the main entrance, this is our so-called women's quarters, and it's where our patients walk from 12 until lunchtime. If anything I can say from my observation, Kathy often likes to stand under that London tree, which is closer to the road. I've noticed her standing under the tree a couple of times, looking out at the roadway. Kathy nodded his head and lit a cigarette. He went on his way, throwing a few words to the guy. "Good, then I'll see you tonight, or rather, tomorrow. Drop by my place in the evening to look at the collections." Michael looked at his neighbor and said nothing. He's weird. But on the other hand, he needs help now. And if the neighbor helps, it will be great. After all, even one life-saving achievement of medicine shift this day went quietly. No incidents, excesses, or patient antics. No nighttime police visits that might have suggested bad thoughts. Except that Kathy was restless this day. Michael watched her from the residence window, and at one point, noticed the girl becoming anxious. She began to wave her head intensely, and her ribbons in her hair fluttered in the wind. Then she turned abruptly and ran away from the fence. Directing his life toward Black Pond, the boy looked carefully at the roadway. Near the curb stood a dark blue, unremarkable car, old, but on the move, strange. "Who is it?" Michael said it out loud. And then another orderly, Liam, turned around and looked out the window. "What kind of car is that?" "We've got to get to the bottom of this." And he ran out of the office. And in a few seconds, his broad back, the guy saw near the fence. The orderly waved his hands, shouted something in the direction of the driver. But apparently, it had no effect. A few minutes later, though, when the chief physician started to approach the car suddenly sped off. That's an interesting situation. What's all the fuss about? It's just a car. You can't even see through the tinted windows. Who's in there? After a couple of minutes, Liam entered the office red as a boiled crawfish and started pacing the room back and forth. Michael at first said nothing, and then asked with the most indifferent tone possible, "And who was it in the car?" "Yes, you see, Michael, one psycho or psychos drive here under the fence and look at our patients. File a police report." The guy deliberately put such a provocative question, looking at the orderly and watching his reaction, but his face reflected nothing but anger and irritability. What's the use of these cops? They only throw up their hands. They say it's none of our business. No corpus delicti and all that. And we have to run around chasing these assholes away. Yeah, there's plenty of crazy people out there. By the way, have you noticed how new this is? Kathy's patient react to that car. No, I didn't see her shaking, and she stood there shaking her head, and then she ran toward Black Pond. Oh, shit. Why didn't you say something? And the orderly rushed out into the street. I wonder why he reacted like that. Michael became curious, and he went to the window. The orderly was standing next to the head doctor, telling him something. Then he pointed toward the pond, and they both went there at a brisk pace. This is interesting, thought the trainee, and quickly ran to the first floor. He went to the artificial pond, which enjoyed a bad reputation already on the shore of the notorious Black Pond. The guy caught a picture on the shore, sat Kathy, and swayed, and near her stood an orderly and the chief physician, and nervously smoked. Guy did not understand what was going on, so he approached the trio and nodding at the girl, asked Noah, "What happened?" "Yeah, you know, Michael. The first day Kathy almost went swimming in the lake, and when Liam said she ran here, I thought she had a craving for water again. So she'd have wet her feet in waist-deep water. How can I put it, Michael? Our patients are such that they can drown themselves in a spoonful of water, and her reaction to the car Liam told me about also surprised me. She never showed any emotion before. Maybe the hypnosis has stopped working, and she is coming to her senses and grieving. You've probably been skipping classes on the subject of hypnosis, and it's the kind of thing that doesn't weaken over time. It's not sleeping pills or tranquilizers, is it? I guess, Noah, I guess. Both Michael and the doctor in charge stood by the lake for a few minutes, watching as the orderly took Kathy to the women's ward. I wonder what's going to happen to her and why she reacted the way she did to the car parked near the fence. Is there something to that? I'll have to tell my neighbor about it. Maybe he knows something, but the neighbor was the one in that car. Benjamin kicked his old broad out of the garage and thought it would be more convenient to watch the loony bin on wheels. It was at 1:30 that he drove the car up to the place where the loonies were strolling, and oh joy, near this fence stood Kathy. It was the daughter of the St. Petersburg authority figure. There was no doubt about it. Yes, he had seen her about 15 years ago. She had grown up and become a beautiful girl, but her eyes were still the same, just like when he'd seen her at her birthday party when she was 7. I wonder if the scar is still there. I should ask Michael to look at the scar on her leg. That's the only way to tell. I parked Benjamin's car with the window down and looked at the girl carefully. They must have drugged the poor girl with some pills. She's as good as dead. Eyes blank, all dressed up in some stupid costume. Yeah, I guess the guy's right about it all looking like something. The man rolled down the passenger side window more and called out to the girl, "Kathy, listen to me. Don't be afraid. I'm Uncle Benjamin. Do you remember me?" The girl stood there for a minute, paying no attention to the car and the driver. Then she turned her head and looked at him. At that moment, Benjamin waved his hand and smiled. But a meaningful thought suddenly flashed on the girl's face, and she began to shake her head, and then screamed and rushed running towards the park. Shit. Benjamin didn't expect such a reaction, and so quickly, closing the window, rushed out of the place in the direction of the city. I don't want to be seen here, otherwise they'll dump the office. Benjamin drove around the city for half an hour, and coming back, he could not resist and drove slowly along the fence of the psychiatric clinic. But there was no one in the yard. It must be lunchtime, the man said to himself, and decided to have a snack. He turned the steering wheel and headed for the nearest cafe to drink strong flavored coffee and eat a sweet mug. He had long favored this cafe with its own pastry shop. It served the strongest coffee and delicious pastries, just like when he was a kid. Yes, the man thought, when my grandson comes to visit me, I'll definitely bring him here with his father to drink coffee and eat more delicious food. But emotions came over Benjamin at the mention of his grandson, and a traitorous terror returned to his eye. You're not well. The waitress came up to the man and handed him a menu. No, the girl just remembered his grandson, who lives abroad with his father, and thought that it would be nice to bring him here. It's just a bit of a rush, so to speak. I understand. Coffee and a mug for you as always. Although, you know, I'd advise you that our pastry chef has never tasted better. Let's have your labor. We should try it. Because, girlfriends. The man drank coffee and smiled at the rays of sunshine that penetrated the cafe, fell on his table and hands. It was so good to just sit there and think about nothing and enjoy every minute. But he had to go home and think about how to plan his evening, or rather, his night out at the clinic. Benjamin paid for his coffee and, leaving the waitress a generous tip, drove home. Already at home, he slept, touched up, under the shower, and after making himself a strong tea, sat down in the kitchen. Coffee is good, but strong and sweet tea helped him to think. Probably, habits from places not so distant were making themselves known, but he had long ago stopped paying attention to the fact that he was sitting down and what people would think of it. And now he was helping a friend whose daughter had disappeared under very strange circumstances. A traitorous terror came to Benjamin's eye again. He remembered his daughter, beautiful and clever, who had gone to the Emirates and found her happiness there. How she was happy about her new job. And her husband, who, to his credit, loved her very much. Pregnancy and rejoiced. But, so Benjamin Nikita do not need to wipe the snot and pull Kathy. And the man began to pack a backpack, a flashlight, and an old lockpick set for a night out. Machine oil, so the lock wouldn't stick, if anything. Now, having lost one daughter, he wanted to help his friend Kathy's daughter get out of the asylum. The man had long thought about why she had been kidnapped a year ago from her father's home, and many people had written it all off as a thievery. But that's not the case here. Alex is a competent and clever man. He's handled the most heated disputes, so sworn enemies parted as friends and best partners. And here, who would take revenge? No, the man shook his head. It's something else, he thought to himself, not what others think. Why did he think that? He didn't know. But if the girl he'd seen today was Kathy and was his friend's daughter, Benjamin realized what the reason might be. The girl had an unearthly beauty, her figure, long blonde hair, blue eyes, and she had the same mind as her father. And if he was right, then she was probably kidnapped by visiting tourists who were in the business of kidnapping and shooting racy movies. Maybe that's what happened. But the man was simply afraid to think what Kathy might have done. After all, even among the right criminal authorities, violence is a forbidden topic. A woman must be loved. She must be persuaded. You have to placate her with gifts and kisses, but you can't rape her. all the more to shoot nasty things against her will. It's one thing for a woman to do it for money. It's another to rape her. Well, it's gonna be all right now. Be patient, Kathy. Throwing his backpack over his shoulders, Benjamin went out into the street and headed towards the psychiatric clinic. It was already dark, and there were no stars in the sky. What pleased the old thief? He quietly approached the fence and skulked away, but with a ducking motion. He stopped imperiously under a tree and looked around. There was no one. There was silence. It was ringing dark. Only, in the windows of the first-floor patients' rooms, there was a dim light burning. That's good. That means I won't need a flashlight. This light will suffice. And the man rushed to the cellar, quickly oiled the lock, and opened it professionally. Benjamin did not hang it in place, leaving the door covered, but not tightly, so that in case of need he could quickly run out. The hinges should be oiled as well. It wouldn't be good if the door suddenly peeked open quickly. Coping with the hinges, the man began to listen to the sounds in the basement and slowly walked forward. The hallway was quiet. On the left side were storerooms, some closed, others without doors. That's fine, the old thief thought. There will be a place to hide in case of trouble. Strange, where these subhumans had found a porn studio. But at the very end, Benjamin saw a massive door, so stuffed with felt. Yeah, there you are, and soundproofed at the very end so no one could hear the girls screaming, the bastards. He went to the door and listened. But what kind of work had been done there? But what kind of barrier was there? There was no door that could not be opened by an old thief who had gone through a fine school. Indeed, the locks were also hidden under a layer of felt. Good point. No sound will get through the gaps. Well, that's clever, but I'll get you open. The man lifted the layer of felt carefully and listened. Quiet, which means no one. That's good, which means we can work. And Benjamin carefully began to pick the lock. Yes, it's a fancy lock, but for a craftsman like me, it shouldn't be too hard to pick. And after a couple minutes, the man opened the door to the secret studio. Wow, that's quite a spread. The furnishings, state-of-the-art, technology, and newfangled digital equipment, all put to great use. No wonder with the police running it all. And apparently, they're making a lot of money. Yeah, I guess crazy movies are popular with crazy people. But that man heard how heavy doors, covered with his lacquer, began to open, and without thinking, Benjamin jumped under the bed. That's quite a situation. At least the bed was wide, and it was covered with a long sheet all the way to the floor. Shit, thought the thief. What a fool not to listen to what was going on outside the door. So I got him. The main thing is not to suspect anything and not to search the place. But apparently the unexpected guests didn't suspect a thing. Oh, look, Noah's already opened the door. Didn't have to fiddle with the lock. Yeah, Stas. It's a nice studio. There's plenty of room for fun. And the man sat down on the bed and took pictures, and he laughed. Apparently, it was the cops Michael was talking about, who had been let in by the head doctor. So Benjamin quietly exhaled and listened further. Yes, boss. What are we going to do here? Are we going to film racy scenes? No, just participate. We got some local girls from the head doctor. So we'll try new things, boss will. It's not very exciting, but it's mental. I don't know what's on her mind. Would she bite or stab at the peak of pleasure? No. Yeah, well, it's a valid concern, Benjamin thought. But if you had a knife, you'd be so heavy. You'd be falling out of bed. You must be 150 pounds. And all that on a young girl. Ugh, that's disgusting. But what to do? So far, luck was not on his side. But then another man came into the room and said, "Sorry, Mr. Mikhailovich, I can't make it today. Apparently, it's either the moon or the stars. But our girls are on a rampage. Aha." Apparently, the head doctor tearfully apologizes for his wards. But apparently, the police, brass didn't like the news. And he's not happy. Noah, why is that? Or does the hospital no longer have the appropriate injections? We've injected a couple of times, and the girl sleeps well. Yeah, we've already injected them, but it's still wrong. I'm sorry. Come back in a couple days and I'll put them on hard shots. Then they'll be as smooth as silk. All right. The cop said grudgingly and got out of bed, walked towards the exit. But next time, there should be 2 or even 3 girls. The doctor answered nothing, but only closed the door behind his guests, locking it shut. After a few minutes, the thief crawled out from under the bed and began to look around. He decided not to rush out of the room, but to put his video camera here. He definitely needed proof of what was going on here. Kathy then. He can quietly get out of the room, but this office needs to be covered up, and he knows to whom he will send the received materials. To his daughter Alex. I'm sure he'd tear anyone's throat out. Quietly, looking around, only stopped her gaze on the partners who were closing the improvised window. So over there at the very top you can install a camera. Yeah, it was a good thing he had his introductions. And not too long ago, he'd been fitted with a mini camera that ran on batteries and turned on the recording at any movement. So, sweetie, put it up and film it here. And the other day I'll come and check what you've prepared for me and make sure the camera is in working order. Benjamin copied carefully his video, point, and check everything behind him and quietly left the room. He locked the door and quietly walked out of the basement. There was no one near the entrance, but still God protects him, said the nun. The thief said quietly and began to walk along the walls to the cherished fence. Going out into the street, he took and walked along the road, pretending to stroll in the picturesque. Cat, taking in his hands a pre-prepared bottle of beer. And even if he was stopped by the police, they would not be able to attribute anything but an administrative offense to him. Although it's not like breaking into a mental institution, but I'll get over it. And with a quiet step, he went in the direction of his house. Got to the house. Benjamin quickly for about 10 minutes and already in his apartment, having thrown off his clothes and stood under the shower, he exhaled with relief. Yes, I have not seen such a case since the dashing 90s. But the good thing is now there will be evidence and grounds to visit you, gentlemen in white coats on legal grounds, and smash your balaganza with all the proletarian hatred. We've had a night's experience, and the smell of a psychiatric clinic. Old Kogan went to the kitchen and made himself some tea. He had to think calmly about what he had seen and how to present it to his Street Petersburg friend. The fact that they were making strawberries there, the man realized. And in principle, the camera will definitely record all the abominations. It's a matter of technique and time. But what about the girl who looked a lot like Kathy? You'll have to leave that to Michael. He works there, albeit as an orderly, but it would be easier for him to examine her under any pretext. Now, we just have to wait for the morning and for what Michael and I will bring. Benjamin turned off the light and left the cup on the table and went to bed. After all, the coming day also promised a lot of things to do and new information. It was necessary to have a fresh head to think everything over and make the right decision. Already, closer to 10 o'clock to the old thief at the door rang. Probably Michael, and he was not mistaken. Uncle Benjamin, I came straight from work to see you. May I come in? I've been waiting for you. I just got up and made breakfast. Give me my hands and sit down at the table. I don't feel like eating right now. Uncle Benjamin, do you have a lump in your throat? Our lunatics almost went crazy today. I don't know what happened, but they all went crazy. Some howled, others sang songs, and the women's ward all threw off their clothes. It was a restless night, I know. Michael looked at his neighbor perplexed, but did not ask anything. He sat down at the table and looked at the plate of scrambled eggs Benjamin had placed in front of him. I stopped by your lovely basement today, and got into the spicy studio. And by the way, while I was there were visitors, most likely. Your Noah, the head doctor, and the police. But don't worry, nothing happened. First came the cops, then came your doctor and said that the patients are raging. So everything was quickly turned off. But it's not worth the wait. He promised them strawberries in a couple days. But I left the video camera there for now. I'll pick it up in a couple days. We'll see what's on it. And then we'll figure out where to go and who to show it to. By the way, did you check to see if this new Kathy patient of yours has a cross-shaped scar? Yeah, the night before everyone else, I was working on her, and I got a good look at it. It's a small one just below the kneecap. Benjamin nodded and smiled. So it really is Kathy. She had been found. There was no doubt now. That was good. I'd have to get proof of the lectuary, the doctors, and the police. Then we could celebrate. Victory. It's her, said Benjamin, eating scrambled eggs. There's no doubt now. But we have to wait a while. Let the camera capture everything. And then trust me, I know who to show the material to. And it won't go away. Uncle Benjamin, I realize you're a lawman, but it's one thing to have a criminal altercation and another. This needs to go to court. That's right, sweet man. What did you think? Gangbangers in black cars are gonna come in and shoot everybody, and that's it. No, we're just gonna show them all up. And then there's the lawyers, the courts, and of course, the media. Don't worry about that. Just keep your ear to the ground at your job and try to make sure that nothing happens to Kathy during these days. By the way, who's giving her the sedation shots? Yeah, there's this Liam. Orderly, big guy with huge fists. Why? Try to make sure you get the job. You make sure you don't give the girl the shots. She has to come off the drugs and be, so to speak, sober and clear-headed when it all comes to a head. But even if things don't work out, just keep an eye on her. Michael nodded his head and smiled, acknowledging the breakfast. He himself hadn't noticed how hungry he'd gotten in 24 hours and practically gobbled up everything he prepared in one fell swoop. Yes, he had a good appetite. The landlord looked at the young orderly and smiled. The man brewed tea and took out his favorite girlfriends. Let's drink tea. And listen to me carefully for now. Michael nodded his head, began to listen to the old thief. He told him that Kathy, supposedly the daughter of one of the street Petersburg authorities, it was time to close the studio, and his help would be very helpful. And she wasn't mentally ill, more like a kidnapping victim. Half an hour later, the guy was on his way home. Uncle Benjamin's gonna go, or my mother and grandmother will be worried. And you call me if you need anything. And where will you find out? Okay, while we wait. If there's anything new, I'll drop by Grandma's. Thanks for the goodies. She's always spoiling the old man. What are you, an old man? You'll give the young ones a head start, won't you? And shaking hands, the neighbors parted. Michael opened the door and from the doorstep heard the smell of his grandmother's famous PR. She at his place always cooked her signature delicious and grandmother's pie. Smells like from the doorstep. Why'd you stay late at work? Oh no, I stopped by my neighbor Benjamin's. But they're to talk and I was going to talk to the old fella about something. Mom, don't coach. No one's safe from jail or prison. We all could be, just like in my Elms house, by the way. And the guy threw his backpack on the hall table and went to the bathroom to wash his hands. When he came out, he went into the kitchen, where breakfast was already on the table. Mom, I don't want any. I ate at work, but tea and cake would be great. Michael didn't tell her that he'd had breakfast at the old thugs. He didn't want to make his mother nervous. The woman looked at him carefully, but didn't say anything. Only the grandmother, apparently, guessed where her grandson had eaten, but shook her head, said nothing. Grandson. But I just put the pie on. Will be ready only in half an hour. In the meantime, bear with me. All right, I'll help Siberia in the meantime." One boy nodded his head and gave his grandmother a peck on the cheek and went back to his room. Michael spent these days at home, waiting for information from Benjamin, but he was silent. They crossed paths in the yard a couple of times, but the neighbor only said hello and didn't say anything. And the guy didn't really insist. He understood that if he didn't say anything, it was the right thing to do. But on Sunday, Benjamin decided to check the familiar basement and take the camera. He didn't tell his neighbor about his plans. He decided to take the tape first, see what he had, and then act according to the situation. Late at night, Benjamin, as he did the first time, went to the cellar door and looked around. Everything was quiet, but the silence was deceptive. Come on, he had to go get the camera anyway, and he slipped downstairs, opened the greased door, and froze on the threshold. The man listened carefully to the sounds, but the silence was sepulchral. With quiet shuffling steps, Benjamin approached the very last door, orbited it, and varnished it and lifted it. At the keyhole, he listened carefully. Quiet. So the studio is not working for its intended purpose today. That's fine, no one will interfere. Quickly removing the camera, Benjamin headed for the exit, and just as quickly went out and closed the door as he came in. But as he passed the women's quarters, the man didn't hold back. He walked over to one of the dimly lit windows and peered through it at a bed and a dark-haired woman sitting on it. A woman dressed in a short dress with ribbons in her hair. Yes, thought the man. Another victim. How did I get the camera in time? He mentally pitied her because he knew what would happen next. But on the other hand, what could he do now? Nothing. Once outside, Benjamin walked home as before, pondering what he would see on the tape at home. He inserted the flash drive into the TV. The man began to watch the video, and what he saw there only confirmed his suspicions. And the worst and most disgusting, he angrily turned off the TV after a few minutes of watching, threw the remote on the couch, and went out onto the balcony. Yeah, that was to be expected. Okay, now we can show Alex all of this, and then let him think how to deal with these creatures and tell Kathy about it. Benjamin smoked a long time to calm down, and understandably so. Seeing all that filth, although he is a thief and experienced, has seen a lot in his life, but such a man has always respected women. But how do they even do it? They're sick women. It's unthinkable, and he couldn't find an answer. What's there to say? Mental illness must have its own degree of variance, or maybe it's congenital. Who knows? Benjamin threw the cigarette butt down and went to bed. What was it, though? Even after a couple of minutes of watching, he was shivering. But apparently, fatigue and emotion took over, and the man fell into a deep but restless sleep. Already, in the morning, Benjamin was on duty on the balcony to look for Michael, who had to return from work. And when he appeared at the entrance, he called him and gestured for him to come up to him. "Uncle Benjamin, anything new?" "Yes, not on our honor. Remember I told you I put a camera in the basement?" Benjamin nodded and beckoned him into the hall, turned on the video, and let him watch. It was filmed by Michael. The orderly was horrified to see the head doctor and his cronies having fun with sick women at night. He certainly did not expect such a thing. The boy closed his eyes and quietly said, "Turn it all off." Benjamin did not argue. It was really disgusting. He sat there and didn't know how to go on living with it. Opening his eyes, he looked at the landlord and asked if he had anything to drink. He nodded his head and took out a bottle of vodka from the bar. He hadn't been drinking for a long time, but he always had alcohol just in case, and now he put a glass of white vodka on his neighbor's face. He held it out and said, "Wait, I'll bring snacks." But Michael did not wait for an appetizer, but drank the vodka in one fell swoop and sniffed it with his sleeve. At that minute, the host entered the room with a slice of sausage and cheese, but the guy nodded his head negatively and said, "I can have some more vodka, but at least you're behind the ring." Benjamin poured, sat down next to him. Michael drank this glass in one breath, and now he took a snack and looked at the old thief attentively, talking about what we'll do, what we won't do, and what you'll do. "I already thought to show to whom it is necessary to give a report to their own, and I will wait what they will tell me. But I think it won't take long to get a reaction. I also asked you here on purpose. I want to warn you that there may be some serious inspections at your clinic in the near future. I'm aware of that. I hope everything's legal and these assholes don't get away with it. Don't worry, they won't. You tell me, how's Kathy? How can I tell you? I got the head doctor to let me give her shots, just for show. But I didn't. But then, you see, Uncle Benjamin, she came into the clinic sort of hypnotized. So, she probably doesn't realize where she is. Or maybe it's like, she's in there. And is she really mentally damaged? I hope not. Although we can't rule out that possibility. But now, the main thing is to get her out of there. And then other specialists will deal with her." And Michael nodded his head. He was sober as a glass even after 2 glasses of alcohol. Apparently, the nervous shock did not let the alcohol to work. The guy sat on his neighbor's couch for a while longer, silently leaned back, then looked at the man and said, "I'm going home. I need to be good. Just Michael, I'm begging you, don't do anything on your own right now. Do you realize how dangerous this is? That's one thing. And secondly, you can't do anything on your own. You'll only make things worse for yourself and Kathy and the other patients." The boy nodded his head. He realized he was right. And it was stupid and dangerous to take any action now. All he could do was wait. But he didn't wait long. The very next day, he was summoned to work. "Michael, good morning. Is no bothering you? You've been summoned to work immediately." The head doctor's voice was frightened and trembling. "Good morning. What's wrong?" the guy asked. It was just for show. Did he realize what might be going on in his clinic? Nothing yet. Come on over." And the head doctor hung up. "Yeah, that's how you guys got moving." Apparently, the neighbor got the materials to the right place. And now the guy quickly got dressed and started to leave the apartment when he was stopped on the doorstep by his grandmother. "Michael, what are you doing up so early?" the chief of medicine called. "I have to go to work for my shift." "So you didn't even bring any food?" "No, I didn't have a shift. There's something going on, and it's probably an emergency." "Okay." Then he slammed the door, and 5 minutes later he was at work. And what he saw made the guy very happy. A whole brigade of enforcers were crowding around the main entrance. Orderlies and doctors nervously stood and smoked in the distance, and patients were carefully taken out and put into ambulances. Michael approached the orderly Liam and asked Liam, "What is going on?" "Don't you see, OMON, we're raiding and cleaning up, and that someone is selling drugs. Go higher. Someone organized a porn studio in our basement, and they blamed it on our head doctor and a few of his henchmen. That's what it's all about." Michael made a surprised face, but at that very moment he saw Kathy being taken out of the women's building by 2 men and carefully put into a black Jeep. So she really was the daughter of a reputable thief. But thank God she wasn't mentally ill. He looked at her and was startled by the hand on his shoulder. "It was you, Michael." The voice was commanding and quiet at the same time. He turned around and saw a man dressed in an expensive suit. He immediately realized that he was either one of the highest representatives of the government or a criminal authority. Michael nodded his head and only wanted to ask, "Who are you?" But the man was ahead of him. "I'm Alexander, Kathy's father. Benjamin, your neighbor, told me everything about you, about your help. So thank you for bringing my daughter back. You're welcome. I know it doesn't have to be this way." It's mean and wrong. Kathy's gonna be okay." The man nodded his head and looked at the boy carefully. But he didn't say anything. And what could he say if he didn't know anything about his child's condition? But God willing, everything would be fine. He just nodded his head once more, thanked him quietly, and turned around and walked to his car, which immediately sped away. As soon as he closed the door, Michael stared after him for a few minutes, reflecting on the situation, and at that moment the chief doctor and his associates were being loaded into the truck. It was all over. Michael did not notice how his neighbor Benjamin quietly approached him and clapped him on the shoulder. Now all the members of the Corps de Ballet have been captured and sent to places not so remote. Believe me, my contacts will make sure of that. And Kathy, it was her dad, but in a black BMW. Yeah, I think she'll be fine. And you, neighbor, thanks for pulling her and the other women out of that bondage. Michael raised an eyebrow, perplexed, not really understanding what the neighbor was saying, but he immediately clarified. You see, Kathy isn't the only healthy woman in this almshouse. Many beauties were just grabbed on the street and brought here under the guise of one or another mental disorder. And what was done to them next? You know what I mean. Now the shop's been shut down. And a special big thank you from my friends. The neighbor patted him on the shoulder and went home. And Michael stood on the street and smoked for a long time, realizing that there could be a great number of such clinics all over the country. After all, there will always be people like his chief physician, the chief of police, prone to such entertainments. But now, Michael realized that there was one less clinic of debauchery, and it was his direct merit. He walked home and thought about how a person's fate can turn out. Even take Noah, the head doctor, a respected man, and an excellent specialist. But something drove him to such a crime. Kathy is the daughter of a wealthy father, albeit with a criminal record, intelligent and beautiful. She had suffered at the hands of non-humans who could simply stab her with drugs to the point of being a vegetable. But that's all in the past now, and his town can breathe easy. Oh, Michael, you got home from work so fast, lady. How's Grandma's pie cooking? The grandmother looked at her grandson and realized everything on his face. She smiled and put her specialty pie on the table, pouring her grandson some tea-flavored tea. The woman knew that now everything would be fine in this town, and certainly no one else would get hurt. And all of this was due to her grandson. She was proud of him, as any grandmother would be. After all, it is probably right to say that one loves one's grandchildren more than one loves one's own children. Betty smiled, and after patting him on the head, sat down on a chair and carefully washed her specialty pie with doctors like him flying in both cheeks. One could be calm for every patient, for everyone.